County Commission meeting here on February 18th. I want to call this meeting to order, and I believe we are ready to start the introductory video. February 18th, 2020 meeting of the County Commission to order. Thank you again to you all for being with us this evening. Let's begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll please rise and join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since our last County Commission meeting, early voting has started at locations throughout Buncombe County. We have early voting sites throughout the community to make it convenient for folks to get out and vote over the next 2 weeks. And of course, people can vote on Election Day on March 3rd. While we live in a time of a lot of political acrimony, and oftentimes it seems that we talk past one another when we're talking to people with different political views instead of talking to one another. I want to ask that as we gather this evening, we not forget that the democratic process we have in our country is one of our country's greatest gifts and strengths. Before we begin our meeting this evening, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence to recognize all of the men and women who have fought and sacrificed throughout our country's history so that we have the right to vote in our country today. And that includes all of those who served our country in the military, as well as all of those who supported and participated in the important social movements in our country to make sure the right to vote belongs to everyone. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. All right, we have a few announcements. First, I want to announce that anyone who is attending the County Commission meeting this evening who parked in the county's parking facility next door or who used public transportation to come to the meeting this evening can receive validation for your parking or transportation passes with one. You can see one of the officers who's here this evening on your way out, and they'll validate that, and that's for today only. I want to read the ethics reminder to the board. In accordance with the code of ethics adopted by the board, all county commissioners have a duty to obey all applicable laws regarding official actions, to uphold the integrity and independence of the office, to avoid impropriety in the exercise of official duties, to faithfully perform the duties of the office, and to conduct the affairs of the governing board in an open and public manner. Is there any item on the agenda, the outcome of which will have a direct, substantial, and readily identifiable financial impact for any board member? Also, does any board member have a financial interest in any public contract coming before the board today? There being none, all board members have a duty and obligation to vote on any matters voted on by the board at this meeting. All right, so we come to the consent agenda. Are there any questions from any commissioners about any items on the consent agenda?
Brownie.
Yes, sir.
Chairman, not just the consent agenda, but the board appointments with one seat vacant here. Can we put that off until the 3rd of appointing anyone on this board or any of the boards we're going to be voting tonight?
For any of the, under board appointments for the, there's several different boards, so you're asking that we move that to the next meeting?
Yes.
I am open to that. And what's your reasons for that,
Well, I
Commissioner?
just think with new commissioner that will be coming on the next couple weeks, that I'll have the opportunity to hear his vote and, have the concerns that we all 7 should be a part of this instead of 6 of us.
Let me ask you that. That kind of raises another question. When is the executive committee going to meet?
They should be
fill
meeting on the
this position.
24th and should be getting a letter on the 25th.
The county should get a letter on the
Yeah.
25th. So we should plan to have the vacancy issue on the next county commission meeting.
Be the 3rd.
Okay. I'm open to it. I don't see anything that's particularly urgent. I mean, I think, we do have to continue carrying out the county's business with, so I think I probably wouldn't be open to moving other agenda items off, but in terms of these boards and commissions, I don't see any real urgency around it, so it seems fine with me. Does any other commissioners have any
No, it's
suggestions on that? Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I would like to also discuss the library board. They're having upcoming appointments in March, and just wanted, since we're on the boards and commissions, how do we want to handle that? Previously, the board has done, or the library has done interviews. Would you like to have the interview process done by the commission or the library itself?
Well, I tell you what, why don't we, although it sounds like there's agreement to not vote on any board or commission appointments this evening, why don't we talk about that question as well as these other appointments too, because we've been doing a lot of interviews on these other big boards that we had to fill recently, but we might want to talk about whether we want to do some interviews for some of these other boards too. So why don't we get back, when we get to that, let's talk about it, and if I forget, Lamar, remind me, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Are there any members of the public who have any questions about any items on the consent agenda? Mr. Rice. I'm sorry, could you come up, please, and
Yeah, I can't
so we
hear
make
you,
sure we can
Jerry.
hear you.
I've been wanting to do that for a long time. Yeah, turn that thing up, dude.
Thank you.
Get in that mic.
Well, don't be calling me a loudmouth anymore.
No, we won't. We
All
won't.
right. On the resolution on the deputy finance officer for the inmate on the trust bank account, what's the purpose of that now? It hadn't been in the future, in the past. Just wanted to know why that it's coming up now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Warren, do you want to speak to that?
Absolutely. This is on. Okay. Yes, we had a site visit from the Local Government Commission, and one of the things we were talking through were some of the findings, how we were addressing them. It came up that the bank account that is held by the Sheriff's Office for the inmate trust, which is a separate account that they handwrite checks and send the check off with an inmate when they're released in the middle of the night, is not compliant with Section 159 of General Statutes, which requires that the finance officer or deputy finance officer certify those funds. So in order to do that, we need to assign a sheriff department personnel to actually be a deputy finance officer. So the way it's written is the signatures on the bank account will serve as the deputy finance officer, and then we will be in compliance.
Okay, so we're not we're utilizing people that are already in that financial position for this to
Correct.
make the approvals.
We're not hiring anybody additional. We're not doing anything other than putting it, memorializing it, and bringing ourselves into compliance.
Right, okay. I do have one thing, Chairman, I just want to make sure is clear on the technical correction to the East Asheville Library project. You know, for those that haven't looked at that, that's in there. There was the amount has been corrected because the amount on the resolution was incorrect. The vote was approved on the full amount, the larger amount that's stated in here, so it's not any differences. The full approval was given, and so the resolution was incorrect, so it's being corrected.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda and to follow the remainder of the agenda as published?
So move.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Our first item is a public hearing for the NIPRO Economic Development Agreement, and Tim Love is going to present this item.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. This evening, before you, we have a presentation on economic development incentives. With me for this presentation, I've invited Amy Sparks, who is a representative of NIPRO, a Jabil company. Also with me is Clark Duncan, who represents the EDC. You'll hear from both of them this evening, but I'm going to go ahead and kick us off with a presentation. As a quick note, in your packet, you do have a resolution as well as an economic development agreement that we will ask for your approval for later in the presentation. In terms of the background and the request, announced on January 31st of 2020, NIPRO has chosen Buncombe County for its expansion. You should be familiar, but if not, for the members of the public, NIPRO is an existing member in our community. They have about 325 employees based out of their Arden facility, the Vista Industrial Park. They've gone through two prior expansions, one in 2010 and one in 2011. For those that don't know, NIPRO is a manufacturer of medical devices, and I know that can be fairly vague. We'll have Amy describe what some of those real-world devices are, but many of you will know them. They're important to much of what we do. In terms of the request today before the board, we are seeking Board of Commissioner approval for economic development incentives for NIPRO, as well as approval of the economic development agreement between NIPRO and Buncombe County. In terms of sort of the coming expansion, I will invite Amy up to speak to sort of the nature of that expansion, but just wanted to give kind of some quick highlights for you. Off the top, NIPRO is looking to create 68 new jobs here in Buncombe County. In addition, NIPRO will invest approximately $18.5 million in real and business personal property, so think about facilities and large-scale equipment that's taxable. Also want to stress that these 68 new jobs are coming in at an average wage of almost $22 an hour, not including employee benefits. That's an additional benefit that these employees will receive. Additionally, NIPRO is attempting to meet these commitments within 3 years, which is an aggressive schedule. Those are kind of the highlights of what's going to happen, but I'd like to ask Amy to join us, come up to the podium, speak specifically to the nature of the expansion and what y'all are doing.
Okay. Good evening. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Newman, and all of the county commissioners here for their efforts to grow manufacturing in Buncombe County. I also want to thank April Brown and Clark Duncan and Tim Love for their guidance over the last several months. NIPRO, which is now known in the marketplace as Jabil Healthcare, we had a rebranding announcement on February 3rd, has been in the Vista Office Park for 20 years and in Buncombe County for even longer. On January 31st, many of you, the commissioners, were at the Arden facility where we announced an anticipated physical expansion and the addition of 68 new jobs. I'm personally grateful for the county's steadfast support over the years. 11 years ago, my job at NIPRO was the direct result of an expansion project supported by the county, and my first task was to hire people for the production ramp-up. Today, I'm working for a global company doing a job I love in a community I dearly love, and I'm looking forward to hiring at least 68 more engineers, technicians, quality professionals, supervisors, and direct labor over the next 2 years. These are good jobs with insurance and benefits, and despite the unemployment rate in Western North Carolina, I'm confident that we'll be able to leverage local talent to fill many of the positions. This year, as an example, we were able to create a trainee role in anticipation of growth and hired an Appalachian State industrial engineering graduate. We're hopeful that this is the start of a successful career for him and an innovative way for us to close the skills gap. This is just one example of how your support has encouraged our business to evolve. At Jable Healthcare in Buncombe County, we're manufacturing precision plastic components and assemblies. You would recognize many of the products we've produced, including well-known inhalers and insulin injection pens. You've seen the Advair inhaler and inhalers for albuterol and Flovent. We've made all of those. You would recognize, last year alone, we shipped more than 90 million sub-assemblies for just one type of insulin injection pen that we make. Another product we make that's not as well known is a blood diagnostic device that allows wildlife researchers to do animal blood tests in the field and get results in minutes without having to send off blood samples to a lab. The products we make here in Asheville are used all over the world, and many of them are life-saving devices. So thanks to your support, Jable is well positioned to further build upon our capabilities and expertise in Asheville, supporting the company's mission to be the most advanced and trusted manufacturing solutions provider.
Thank you for that, Amy. Commissioners, at this point, I'd like to walk you through the remaining slides to walk through the proposed incentive, some of the benefits, the return on investment, all of that information. As you can see on this slide, we've got a table at the bottom. This is the projected schedule, the build-out schedule, if you will, for NIPRO. So you can see all of the capital investment is occurring in the first 3 years, with the majority of it occurring in year one. Additionally, you can see the jobs on the far right, looking to hire approximately 34 people in year 1 and 2. The way this economic development agreement is structured, it is not top-heavy. It's sort of weighted towards the back. So once NIPRO is able to demonstrate that they've met their commitments, then they'll be eligible for an incentive, but not before. In terms of the incentive, this has been a joint economic development effort, as it typically is, and so we've had extensive conversations with the state, at the Department of Commerce, AB Tech, the EDC, who's here today with us, as well as ourselves. The proposed incentive based on the economic development policy is $170,000. That's a one-time incentive, which, as I said earlier, is payable at the end of the 3-year commitment time frame and will only be paid out if the company is able to justify that they've created the 68 jobs at the specified wage and has met the capital targets that we have presented on the previous slide. In terms of the overall impact, you've seen these numbers before, but the straight up direct impact is the top bullet. You know, we're going to see 68 new jobs and $18.4 million in capital investment. That's going to generate approximately $680,000 in property tax over a 10-year period. And when you subtract out the incentive of $170,000, is an approximately a $500K net positive over a 10-year period. Additionally, the EDC takes sort of a broader look with us at this to understand the full economic impact, and so I want to talk about that in this table. So you can see that table, the first impact type, that's the direct impact, so the straight-up jobs that we're creating. The indirect impact, so this is the impact to local suppliers, folks that work with NIPRO in our local community, and the projected labor income and jobs that will be created through this expansion in that indirect way. The final piece is the induced impact, and this is basically the impact of take-home pay. Folks that are working, buying stuff, what is the impact in our local community? So you can see that projected total impact there. But I do want to be clear, when we talk about return on investment, and when I cite those numbers at the top, about $500K net over a 10-year period, I'm not looking at indirect benefits, I'm not looking at induced, I'm looking at those direct benefits that we can count. I'd like to spend a few minutes on the job incentive and average wage. So NIPRO, as we've said, is creating 68 new jobs, of which about half of those, 35, qualify for the jobs incentive that's in the economic development incentive policy. And so as a refresher for those in the audience, that's any job above $20.90 an hour, which is about $43,000 a year annually. Additionally, in bullet 2, you can see all 68 jobs exceed the living wage that's been documented by Just Economics, which is about $13.50. And additionally, all 68 of those jobs in the third bullet will receive a 50% subsidy for employee health insurance. We talk a lot about wages in this community, so I wanted to take a minute to talk about the wages that NIPRO is creating. So this is a table that lists the 68 positions that will be created based on this expansion. You can see the number in column 2, the hourly wage in column 3, and then an annualized wage in column 4. And then quickly, I just wanted to show you how these positions compare to numbers that we see frequently in our community. So is this a living wage, i.e., is this greater than $13.65? You can see the Y, the green Y indicates yes for all of those jobs. Is this position incentive eligible? That's your column right beside that. So is it greater than $20.90? You can see about half of the jobs. The answer is yes. Does this job exceed the median household income? So as published by the Census Bureau, the total income within a household, which could include multiple people in a household. Again, the answer is yes, about half of the time. And does this exceed the per capita income or the average wage of about $31,000 annually? And in this case, it is once again more than half. But wanted to present to you kind of what these jobs are looking like from a wage perspective, since that is something we talk about frequently.
Tim, could you stay there just a minute? I just have a comment on the slide. I just want the 29 technicians. I mean, we had a conversation when I was at the reveal of the additional jobs, and I just want to put a plug in here for the county CTE program, Career and Technical, and that we get the message out that there are good jobs available in Buncombe County for many families where their kids have just graduated high school and with minimal training from AV Tech, and some jobs don't even require that. They have certain skill sets and they're able to be trained on site. Am I pretty accurate in what I'm saying? I see your head nodding. So, and I just want to make sure that anytime we have jobs like this at those 29, that's just a big deal now and in the future for Buncombe County. So thanks.
Thank you for that. And what I would simply add to that would be, as you can see, based on the positions and the wages, we're appealing to a variety of folks in our economy, entry-level folks, folks going straight out of a technical program or a community college, as well as university education. So with that said, I would ask if you have any questions. So I'm glad to take those. If not, then I'm going to back up to my original request at the front slides. And so the request today is for the board to approve the resolution that authorizes the incentives as well as the economic development agreement between NIPRO and Buncombe County. So at this point.
Right. Thank you, Tim. Let's go ahead and open this up for public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on either the resolution or the agreement? Mr. Yelton, you can go first.
You can make numbers say anything, but when he said that they've got to reach the goals before we give them the money, I think you could have ended the presentation right there, because I think most taxpayers would be very happy with that kind of motivation behind what we do when we're trying to find better jobs. Secondly, I think that we need to look at getting AV Tech off their butt and maybe going to high schools and finding those 29 kids that are in high school and train them while they're in high school, especially if they're potentially don't want to go beyond and get a college degree, that those kids be introduced into that and maybe start working part-time at the plant while they're going to high school. So when they graduate, guess what? Bingo, right into a good job. Things can be done and done right. And I appreciate the numbers, but like I said, if you get to the 170, hey, you could have stopped it right there. That made me happy as a taxpayer.
Mr. Duncan?
Mr. Chairman, members of commission, thank you for this brief opportunity to talk. I would like to start with just a sincere thanks to Amy and her team at NIPRO for their continued commitment to expand in Buncombe County. Expansions like these invest not only in the bricks and mortar of the facility that's growing, but in innovative new technologies and machinery and equipment that will keep this plant on the leading edge of innovation in the fast-growing medical device manufacturing sector. These investments not only create new jobs, but they strengthen the skills and the wages and the career ladders that we all together commit ourselves to in economic development. I actually had the honor of standing at this podium in a different building 10 years ago at that first NIPRO expansion announcement in 2010 that committed some $90 million of new machinery and technology to their Vista facility. And it's exciting for me personally, for us as a community, as a county, and a workforce to be on the precipice of this new era of growth for NIPRO. But my thanks is also to you all very specifically. The leadership of the Commission is essential to our community efforts to strengthen and diversify our economy, to grow wages and grow standards of living, and to encourage greater economic mobility and greater access to career ladders for our families and our neighborhoods all across the county. So on behalf of the 351 manufacturers that do business in Buncombe County, the 14,000 people they employ, and on behalf of the board of the EDC, thank you for your leadership and your support of this project.
Thanks, Clark. Anyone else? All right, commissioners.
So I'll make a motion to,
Let's do two separate motions, one for a resolution, one for the agreement.
man, has this got complicated recently? Oh,
Yes, yes.
okay, so what do we need to do?
Sorry if I didn't say those words.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we need two,
We're right, one to support the resolution and the other to vote in favor or against the actual economic development agreement with the company
so
and the county.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Is there a motion to approve the economic development agreement?
I move that we approve the economic development agreement.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you so much, and best wishes on your future business growth in Buncombe County. All right. Next up is a resolution affirming the right of Buncombe County citizens to vote in municipal elections. And Commissioner Jasmine Beach Ferrara will get us started on this item.
Yeah, good evening. Excuse me, I want to just begin by acknowledging the work that a group of residents of Buncombe County have done to elevate the issue of how we're addressing adjustments to municipal election schedules and the resulting impact on the length of terms. We've had a number of communities in Buncombe County impacted by this, and I think a number of citizens who've raised concerns that certainly for me registered as being concerns we should take seriously and look into and learn more about. So the origins of this resolution really come from folks who live in our community and who felt like as we look ahead, especially sort of against a backdrop of just a lot of changes in the election process for Buncombe County voters year in and year out, whether it's district shifting or municipal elections being rescheduled, that it's important that we have some processes around that and that those processes should really stay squarely focused on ensuring folks' ability to vote and ensuring fairness and transparency around how any adjustments to the length of terms of elected officials would be handled. So that's really just a little bit of context. I do think there's some folks here who are hoping to speak during public comment, but we certainly can read the text of the resolution. It's available online. Do you think we should go ahead?
It's pretty short.
Yeah,
Commissioner,
okay.
why don't you read it for us?
Okay. This proposed resolution is titled "A Resolution Affirming the Right of Buncombe County Residents to Vote in Municipal Elections." It reads, "Whereas the right to vote is the foundation of our political system, whereas for the first time since Buncombe County was founded in 1792, the municipal elections of 4 of the 6 Buncombe County municipalities were canceled, when the 2019 and 2021 municipal elections were canceled for Asheville, Biltmore Forest, Black Mountain, and Montreat, impacting citizens across the county. Whereas the council members of these municipalities elected in 2015 and 2017 to serve 4-year terms will serve a 5th unelected term. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners for the County of Buncombe as follows. 1, the residents of each municipality in Buncombe County have the fundamental right to vote for the members of their respective city and town councils. 2, elected officials should serve the terms to which they are elected and should not extend their own terms. 3, any municipalities in Buncombe County that seek to change their municipal election cycle do so in ways that ensure no interference with the right to vote and that ensure that elected officials are not extending their own terms. And 4, one potential solution to adjusting municipal election schedules while not extending the terms of already elected officials, would be to have adjusted terms of office apply to candidates elected in an election subsequent to the passage of the legislation changing the election process. This would be, should it be approved, it would be read and approved, adopted this 18th day of February. So wanted to introduce this with appreciation to Commissioner Edwards and Chairman Newman for joining me and requesting it as an agenda item.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from commissioners? We will take public input on this, but any other comments from commissioners before we do so?
No, I'm gonna wait.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Jasmine Beach-Ferrara. And, just one thing I just would want to add to clarify, because I think when the topic first came up, there was some confusion on our part about what the possible proposed solution was to what had happened previously. The legislature wanted to change the municipal elections from even year to odd year, and there's some good arguments for that. There's arguments on both sides of the issue. But it did have the result of extending terms of office beyond what people were elected to. And I think we all thought, yeah, that doesn't seem right. But I think we originally thought that some of the citizens who were advocating for this were asking that elected officials have to step down before their terms of office were fulfilled. And we thought, well, that doesn't seem right either. But they actually had a much better solution, which is that changes to terms would just apply in subsequent elections. So it doesn't make anyone's term shorter or longer. It would be adjusted in the future. So it was a very good solution, and eventually through some good conversations, I think our light bulb went off and we understood what the great idea was. So thank you for the education on all that. But we will open it up to public comment at this time. Yes, ma'am. And just let us know your name and where you live, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. And you'll get an orange light when you've got 30 seconds and a red light when your time's up. And please stop when your time's up so we give everyone the same amount of time.
Thank you. Marilyn Sabansky, Black Mountain. Good evening. I asked you tonight to pass the resolution before you that was developed to address the concerns a group of us from Montreat and Black Mountain came and expressed to you back in January and are here to support tonight. I personally had followed the consideration to change our town's election cycle from its earliest public mention at a special call town meeting through the town board's passage of the resolution requesting the necessary change in the town charter, made after only 2 months' time for citizens to hear of it, fully understand its reach, and voice their opinions, through its time in the committees in the North Carolina Senate and House, and ultimately to its passage by the General Assembly. I made my voice of opposition heard by speaking at town meetings and writing my state reps and the entire Buncombe County delegation. I came away from the whole experience feeling dismay, disbelief, and anger. How could it be that the right to vote for our own local leaders, fair governance, be regarded as something insignificant or irrelevant, or worse yet, able to be taken away by those in power while they extended their own terms? Why does a governing board with only a solitary public expression of acceptance in a letter to the editor by a person who later changed her mind, and no publicly stated support from the citizenry, gets to decide about the election cycle, when elections, I would propose, are the people's venue. For this board to take a stance and resolve to affirm citizens' right to vote for members of their own city and town councils, and to declare that elected officials should serve terms they were elected to and should not extend their own terms, etc., is truly noteworthy and heartening. You can serve as role models for what is fair and decent, and I hope you do so. Thank you.
Hello, Ron Marcello, Black Mountain. I was here last month, and I want to first say that I really appreciate that you guys actually listened. Very impressive. The resolution you wrote sounds very impressive to me. So I didn't really come prepared to speak, but I wrote a couple little things down. One is ironic that when you open the meeting, we have a silent prayer to all the people who have fought for our right to vote. You mentioned right to vote 2 or 3 times. And basically that's what we're going for, the right to vote for a 4-year term, not a 5-year term. I mean, I'd vote for a 5-year term if that's was on the ballot, but you know what I mean. Now, what I'd like to see is that the county, you got a commission put out this resolution on their letterhead and perhaps send it to each city in the county, and if cost effective, to each councilman and or alderman or whatever they call themselves in each city, and let them know that you put this resolution out and you don't just stating the facts, what you read to us. And the other thing I was going to say was highlighting the fact that they gave themselves an extra year. You've covered that, and I thank you. Thank you all.
All right, thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Tan, also from Black Mountain, and I'm not as eloquent as Marilyn or Ron is, but I want to let you know that I support this resolution and urge you very strongly to support it as well. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen to us and do the right thing. Elections count, votes matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nina Tovish. I'm a resident of Asheville. At the beginning of this meeting, Commissioner Newman mentioned the crown jewel of our democracy, free and fair elections. If those elections are to mean anything, they must be regular, they must represent the will of the people, and they must not allow elected officials to award themselves time in office beyond that approved by voters. If we look around at our political environment at the moment, it's important to note that confidence in the legitimacy of elections is essential to the well-being of our city, our county, our state, and our nation. And if we can't manage it here locally, how can anybody put their faith in this institution, which is at the core of our democracy? As I was on my way over here, I had a heartbreaking conversation with a young man with whom I work. He's 27 years old. And I told him I was leaving to come speak here. And he looked at me and he said, "How can I trust any of them? They're serving themselves, not us." And when elected officials extend their own terms without bringing it before the people, this is the kind of cynicism and disappointment and disconnect that we get in the citizenry. And then they lose faith in the institutions of democracy. They decide their vote means nothing, and they decide to vote, and I quote, for vermin supreme. This is what we cede when we allow this kind of irregularity to happen. So I beg you to vote for this resolution and to promulgate it as widely as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Yelton, you can go next. And then who would like to go after him? Anyone else? Okay, sure.
Again, Brownie, I wasn't going to say anything, but I can't let this go by without saying this. First and foremost, we're a republic, not a democracy. A democracy is the wolves deciding who they're going to eat for dinner. Bottom line is, though, I look at this group of people, and I'm proud to see them here, because that's what makes that work, you. Now, the question remains, are you going to come to the commission, have a show, get what you want, and go back home? If you do, then the government you have is your responsibility. Yes, I'm a fixture here. Yes, Jerry Rice is a fixture here. And I'm 72. Won't always be a fixture here. But that 27-year-old man needs to realize that he has a voice. And if he doesn't use it, he can't blame you all for what's going on, can he? He can't. Because it's the people's responsibility to make the elected fulfill what you want. That's what a republic is all about. So I applaud you for being here, and I beg you, don't let it be the last time you come. Start watching every day. Watch and stay in tune in what your government's doing. Because I think you all know I'm all for open government. Whether you like me or not, Brady, we're for it, aren't we? And we laugh when we tell Jerry Rice, hey, turn on your microphone. Because it can be fun coming here and developing a relationship with your elected leader. Sometimes you get mad, but I guarantee you sometimes you get mad at your spouse too, don't you? Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, don't be bringing my wife into this stuff. She's a very patient woman.
Mary Standard, Buncombe County, District 2, Montreat. And there's so much to say, and thanks for those who are here. Not everyone plans to speak, but I would like to have the group that has spoken and also those who are here from other aspects, if they would rise as a body in support of the resolution.
No cheering.
And in the essence of time and your support as well. But just speaking to responsibility and personal responsibility, this has been a long time getting here. Members of the council were spoken to and asked not to do this. They went forward. Members of the General Assembly, our Buncombe County legislators, were all contacted and asked not to vote for this in the General Assembly. You are the first body that has responded, heard, and is moving forward to action. And it cannot stop here, because if it stops here with a piece of paper, then it really hasn't accomplished what it needs to happen. It needs to be fixed at the legislative level with the interaction of the General Assembly. But having a resolution from you on your letterhead is key to making that happen. Having the printed press be a vehicle for us to write letters to the editor and for it to be covered by the printed press is another vehicle which gives validity to the argument. So we would ask for your unified support. Hopefully this should be the easiest vote you should ever have to take as a commission, to vote for our individual right to vote, the very principle of democracy, and would ask that you send this forward to each of the council members in the Buncombe County municipalities. It can be done electronically, by paper, as you wish. To also send it forward to each of the members of the Buncombe County delegation and the state delegation to General Assembly, as well as to Governor Cooper, who was not involved in this loop since his signature was not required. But there needs to be an awareness how easily our right to vote was taken away from us. What were they thinking? What were they thinking? And it is, again, frightening how easy it was for us to lose our right to vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right, thank you all for coming out this evening. Commissioners, do you make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
So can I make a friendly amendment?
We'll see how friendly it is.
I think it's pretty friendly. One is, I want to preface what I'm going to say, that I know that the people in the room are, feel a certain way towards, those that are in their elected officials in your area. But I would ask you to focus your energy upon the action, and they in every one of those municipalities, they work hard. I may not agree with everything they do, but that is a tough job to have. So I would like to support all the numbers on there except number 4, and I'll tell you why. Because the first 3 affirm everything that we've been asked to affirm. The bottom is a potential solution that we may or may not be able to do or enact or whatever, or enforce. But the first 3 and all the information, and I've actually had this up since the beginning of the meeting looking at it, will do everything that they have petitioned for, and I think it will also protect the integrity of what y'all have put forth. And I would make a friendly amendment to remove item 4 and leave everything else.
I'd like to comment on it. Part of the reason I like 4 is that I do think, people are aware of the specific situation that happened, right? And so I do think I was confused about ways to potentially address it that would not require people to not have to fill out their term. And I don't think I was alone in that. I think other people were like, well, I'm sympathetic, but that also, the solution seems bad too. So I do, and we're not saying this is the only way to do it. We're just sort of pointing out that if it does come up in the future, this is one possible way to do it. There could be others as well. But I kind of like the idea of not just saying, here's a problem, but there's no equitable way to potentially resolve it.
But by having that in there, we are telling them how we think we ought to resolve it.
It just says one potential solution. It doesn't say you've got to do this.
I know,
it's
but
just like,
it's not coming from Joe Belcher. It's coming from the board.
Mm-hmm.
I might be open to an amendment that included a second potential solution.
I don't have one.
Well, that's sort of that's kind of the place that we got to. Is it is a bit of a tricky issue. You really have to think it through. I got some education from community members who've been working at this for years, and so I kind of echo. I would want to keep number 4 in or add to it if anyone can sort of on the fly construct a second viable alternative solution. This isn't meant to be prescriptive, but just to kind of offer something more concrete than like just don't do X. Here's a way through this. So I think without that addition, I don't think I can accept that friendly amendment.
So that's one advantage that those that write it have over. I've had time to look at it, but that has given me pause through the whole thing.
I hear that.
I support all the rest of it, and again, I don't think you lose any integrity by taking that out.
I come from the other side, Joe. I think if we are going to pass this amendment, we also owe it to the community to suggest how we can correct it going forward. And I think just to pass it without number 4 in or several solutions we haven't helped anything because it'll happen again. But at least we've given them something to, a solution if it comes up again, that they can vote. It starts with the next election or whatever, and it would hold them to 4 years. Because I had problems with it by being a resident of Asheville when I saw it right off. I thought that was not something that I approved when I voted for those people. So I would not vote for it if you take that out, I'll be honest with you. Because I think we owe it to the citizens. If we're going to pass this resolution, we need to put in there how we think it should be handled going forward.
I mean, I don't like being told what to do either. My district's got changed. There's a lot of, politics and all of that. I don't really like it. I don't like any of it. I do wish that we had more solutions in there. I think that we've come up with a solution just so we got a solution, and I don't mind having a solution. I think we put one in there because that's what we come up with, and unless someone gave that to you. Is that the one that we come up?
From the community, really.
The community gave it.
Been, and I want to really give credit. I mean, this is, to Don's point, this is, and to many people, this is folks who've been chewing on this issue and really working every angle in terms of what a citizen can do when they experience an outcome they're upset around. So really the idea and the analysis came from community members who've thought it through.
Right.
So I have expressed my displeasure with number 4. I have presented it as a friendly amendment, and I can't come up with another one to add to it. So I understand where we're at. So we can go ahead and vote, unless someone else has any comments.
Any other discussion? All right, we have a motion. I'm sorry.
Should this pass, are we going to forward it on to municipalities?
What are your thoughts? I thought it was directed to the legislature because they're the only ones who can actually do this, but I don't have a problem.
Send it.
I mean, do y'all have a problem with it? We could share it with the municipalities, but it's really directed to the legislature, all right, which has the authority to actually.
Right.
None of the municipalities can directly change the law. They can ask for it, but
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Jasmine?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a public document, and I would want to share it broadly and widely and hope it can be a resource as this discussion progresses. I can't remember the statistic off the top of my head, but I think there's hundreds of municipalities that are perhaps contemplating this move in the future. So we're talking about its implications in Buncombe County, but there is a statewide aspect of it that ultimately the General Assembly hopefully will take this up and offer some clear guidance, statutory guidance on this.
What are your thoughts, Commissioners? Do you think we should do it that way?
That's great.
Okay,
Yep.
terrific. All right, any other discussion?
Yes, this is a resolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we talked the last meeting about resolutions, correct? And here we are, there's just 6 of the 7 commissioners here. And I think we all agree on 3 of them. Isn't it maybe some way we could work, number 4 is a friendly amendment, that we support 3 of them, but one of them, maybe a couple words or, for more discussion here that we could, because what we want to do, we want to send this out that we agree. But we don't want that one little number 4 that you could read it any way you want to. And I think Commissioner Belcher has a good point there that, what can we do to make this where everyone agrees?
I mean, and I think, I said, I'm going to talk, like I said, I was just joking. I mean, again, the first 3 are they're the main concerns that's been brought to us, and if we're planning on sending this out to everybody, and I mean there is a lot of and I appreciate the comments. Are real excited to share with everybody, send it to everybody, call you legislators and all that, which we should let them know, and I just think we have to be careful. We don't duplicate a other resolutions and send them out to everybody. We just have to be careful with what we're doing. Not that we don't support it, not that we don't agree with it, but I just think we have to use caution when we do that.
Well, maybe we can take one more pass, and can you all clarify sort of what your objection is to number 4? Maybe we can drill in on the language and see what options might exist.
I don't like picking one solution and offering it. It's pretty simple.
And you said you listened to, I support this, but number 4, maybe if we had some input from the people here of, what other solution they could look at, if we can do that, or have we already closed public comment on this?
We have. I think we could have the right of asking a representative from the group. If we want to, we can ask them questions. They can't just start talking, but we could ask questions if we want to. I think they'd probably be willing to field a question.
See, the other thing with number 4 is if the legislature says X, guess what? X is getting ready to happen. Now, we may not like it, but that's the way it's set up in North Carolina. It's just like the district elections that just happened. I didn't have any opportunity to give any input at all, and I will zealously serve the new District 3. But I would like to add a lot more input in it myself. But the fact remains that those changes can be made. But anyhow, if you want to take a shot at it, take a shot at it.
Well, if there's no disagreement, Mary, could we ask you a question? Are there any other potential solutions that the community folks who have been looking at this, are there any other potential solutions that came to mind other than the one that's listed here?
I know of none, and I have, if with the permission of the chair and the commission, misconceptions that y'all had and explaining this to people. This does not, people have thought that we were asking for the elected officials to make this change from odd to even or even to odd, take away a year from their elected term. No, that is not allowed. They are elected to a term. They should serve that term. So how do you make the adjustment? You either have the only solution that makes sense, and walking people through this is hard, is that if it's one election cycle, as in Biltmore Forest, where they all serve on one election cycle, in the following election cycle, the General Assembly would have to approve the change because it's a charter change. They would serve for a 3-year term, which would have been if they had been elected in 2019, so that the subsequent election they would go back in 3 years to the 4-year term, and they would have made their adjustment to the even year cycle. You could have them do this for a 1-year term, but the 3 years seems to make more sense. So that's the only option I have, but with the expense. In the towns of Asheville and Black Mountain and Montreat, where they serve staggered terms, it would require 2 election cycles for that to make sense. And with respect to, again, with the indulgence of the commission, there are 550 municipalities in the state of North Carolina. And it doesn't matter to me whether they serve on an even year cycle or an odd year cycle. That's a policy decision that every council gets to make. It's the process that we're talking about here. If I were talking to you about elected officials giving themselves a $20,000 raise as sitting officials, that's easier to object to. But in essence, giving elected officials an unelected time in office is equally bad. So walking through the weeds, this is the best solution we have come up with. It needs to be addressed at General Assembly level to fix it. And the question that I would pose is what if, since I lived there, the council in Montreat decided to vote to go back to the odd year next year. And they then again extended their cycle for another year. We're into the theater of the absurd. So, but that's where we are. We're already in the theater of the absurd, okay?
Thank
Where
you.
we're being ruled, not represented. But at any rate, so I would advocate for, because just speaking retrospectively of what we generally agree was the wrong act without some sort of proposal, it's really just a meaningless piece of paper. And you're not,
Okay.
I'll stop there.
Got it.
Thank you.
All right, we
Thanks.
got it.
Thanks. We closed the regular public comments, sir.
So I think hearing that, I mean, we again hit this which is just that absent another specific solution to this problem, what is here is the one solution that we've been able to come up with in Buncombe County about how to prevent this from happening again. So I would again feel strongly about the inclusion of number 4 as an important part of the resolution.
So I'm still uncomfortable with it. So I'm very supportive of the rest of them, just uncomfortable with
Yeah,
number
if you-
4 and additional,
I could just make a suggestion. You could make a motion to remove number 4 if you want to. We can just vote on that, and then we can vote on the
okay, I'm
overall.
gonna do that. I'm gonna make a motion that we remove item number 4.
A second.
All in favor of the motion to remove item 4, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
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 All right.
Okay.
All in
you.
favor of the original motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No.
All right. All right. Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone. Appreciate
Thanks,
y'all
guys.
all coming out.
Thanks for the conversation.
All right. Next up is consideration of changes to employees group health insurance, and Kurt Euler is going to start us off on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner and members of the commission. I am here to talk about the proposed changes to our employee health plan. I also have with me here today Katie Queen, who's vice president with Synergy Healthcare LLC, who is doing some of our health risk assessments. And I also have in the corner here Mr. Larry Reese, who's a vice president with USI, who is our employee benefit consultant, and they'll both be part of our presentation. So to get started, first thing is how did we get to where we're at? So if you all recall, back in October of 2018, we had a very similar discussion about our healthcare plan, about some things that we need to do, changes, and we elected not to make any changes for 2019. So with 2019, we didn't make any changes. Then came April of 2019, and Avril was the county commissioner. Max, could I get the PowerPoint? Thank you.
Yeah, I wondered.
All right, this may be a little bit easier to follow. I apologize. So first thing, so in April of 2018, Avril put out a message to employees saying that we're looking at hiring an outside benefit consultant. In April of 2019, we also put out an RFP for a benefits consultant. And in June, Avril posted another message on County Central talking about the budget and her intent to maintain the county's current health plan, but identify ways to slow that growth trend. If you all recall from 2018, from that October meeting, of those that were here, we have a significant trend where our healthcare costs are increasing at a fairly large rate. So we received 12 proposals. We narrowed those proposals down to 4. And on July 16th, we announced that we hired USI, who was the employee benefit consultant. So we gave them our information. USI went and reviewed our health plan and gave us some recommendations. So on August 19th, the county manager posted on County Central that we're reviewing the plan and that we will present the proposed changes in September. And then at the end of August of 2019, we received the recommendations from USI. So I would now ask Larry Reese to come on up and talk to you about what USI found regarding evaluating our health plan. Press that button.
Good evening. My name is Larry Reese with USI. Thank you for the opportunity to be here to present to the board and share our findings. I'm going to run you through about the next 7 or 8. I'm going to run you through about the next 7 or 8 slides. As soon as I figure out how to work it. Wait, there it went. Bear with me just a second.
No problem.
Okay. So this should be familiar to most of the folks in the room who are enrolled in or had the chance to enroll in the medical plans offered here at Buncombe County. You have 3 plans. In the last column, just for comparison purposes, would be an industry average. That industry average is a North Carolina average. And I think the point to make on this slide would be that of the 3 options, all of them would be viewed favorable compared to what would be normative in the industry right now. So your copays generally are the same. The specialist copay is slightly better. Deductibles are considerably favorable, and the family deductibles are also favorable. And then the out-of-pocket maximums are favorable compared to norm. I don't think that's a news flash to anybody in the room. I think that's fairly self-evident and has been for a while, I understand. Bear with me, gang. Am I aiming this in the right direction?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm grateful. Thank you.
So,
Oh.
next slide, previous slide.
Okay. Right on top of the word. This would also just point out maybe the data a little differently. This would be actuarial value. So what percentage of claims would be paid by the plan sponsor? In this case, employer would be Buncombe County. And then what's paid by the employee? And then Blue Cross Blue Shield would be the industry average in this case. So you see that your employees pick up about 6% of the cost, and the normative would be the consumer or the employee or the covered family member picking up about 14% of the cost. And then coordination of benefits is COB and Medicare, and that's about the same in both instances. These are employee premiums expressed a little differently, just 2 tiers. I know there's more than 2 tiers of election, but single and family. These would be your biweekly rates. And again, we just inserted a USI county government average to give you, again, some perspective on the favorability of what you offer to employees today. We played a little bit of a what-if game. We said, what if the county decided to have employees pay something on the order of 14%? So that's where the 8614 comes from. And what would those employee premiums look like in comparison to where they are today? Nothing other than just to try to consume that data a little differently and express in the 14%. Not a recommendation, just a data point.
Can you go back, please?
I can.
Okay, so currently the employee's paying $63.75, or is that the new?
Above that. Currently, your employee pays $25.
And the next is the average.
Correct. The next is just a restatement if the employee paid 14% as opposed to $25.
Yeah, it would be 60. Yeah.
And then the 14% of claims, not of fixed expenses, those would still be picked up by the county.
So where are we at now?
You're at $25 for the standard plan today.
Right now? Okay.
Yes, correct.
Okay, I'm good.
I'll keep us going. So now we'll move to observations about the health status or the risk burden or the disease burden within the group. Very common musculoskeletal endocrinology is basically hormones. That would be diabetes, would be the prevailing disease state within number 2, and then neurology, neoplasms, cancer, psychiatry. So you see the data. This would just suggest that the county would be wise to invest in musculoskeletal. You're about 30% above normative. That 1.2 million is about 30% above. In the diabetes category, endocrinology, you're about the same, maybe a little bit more.
Could you clarify what musculoskeletal, what kind of conditions that might refer to?
I'm sorry, be happy to. So that's, we all kind of, hips, knees, ankles, shoulders would generally be
so any kind of like orthopedic surgeries,
back,
replacements?
low back, you got it.
You think it hurts? Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much.
That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing.
Would this be higher because they were skipping straight to surgery versus other options first?
Host of reasons.
Okay.
Host of reasons, not just that.
Okay.
It's general consumption too.
Okay, but and kind of related to that question, our annual costs, as described on this slide, the numbers are higher because the actual cost of the care are higher, not that our plan is more generous. Or is it both?
I
Like
think
you're saying, if I'm reading it correctly, like on the first category, if I'm interpreting it right, Buncombe County's costs are 3.52 million. The kind of peers would be 1.2 million. Does that mean the actual?
you're north of peer by 1.2. So peer would be
Oh, I see.
2.3.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Okay.
Yeah.
And that increase of 1.2 million means that the actual cost of care to our employees is 1.2 million higher because the actual costs are higher, not because the plan's more subsidized.
I don't want to commingle those because I think the answer is yes and no. Yes, that's why costs are higher, but they're also higher because your plan's richer. I mean, it is what it is. It's a coverage document.
Mm-hmm.
If the coverage is more favorable, just because I'm more or less sick doesn't mean I'm going to have more or less care. The coverage document is going to pay for what I seek. And if the coverage document is more generous, then it's going to cover more of the care that I seek.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I'll continue with that. I'll continue with observations. So this is just data. This is the most recent data available. So we're looking at a fiscal year 16, fiscal year 17, fiscal year 18. So 3 years of data. And again, this just converts now aggregate data to its lowest common denominator, which is per member per month. So a member can be an employee, a spouse, or a covered child. It's per member data. It's all been normalized. And industry would be Municipal America in North Carolina through Blue Cross. So a pretty good benchmark. This would tell you that it's not an anomaly. The county has historically been above that normative data point and remains above that normative data point. And then you're traveling, so rate of trend, consumer price index, we call it trend in health insurance. You're accelerating faster than the normative data is accelerating.
Okay, you're gonna have to bring that down a notch. You're using way too many words that this young man doesn't understand. So just as you go through it, this is higher, that's higher because of X.
So you're higher in all three time periods.
Got it.
And you're higher, and your rate of inflation continues to be higher. So you're not approaching the norm, you're staying above it, and you're going above it more.
Got it.
Oh, wait, you got to go back. Hang on, guys. There we go. So this just starts to put together a story, and I will there's a lot of data here, but I'll just say we feel like there's an opportunity to impact 2.3 million. So in 18, you spent $28 million. Extra claims is an interesting term, but 10.6 million, you cover quite a number of covered members under the plan. And we think because of the membership, there's 6.8 million being spent. Because of the level of coverage, the richness of the plans, that's about 1.6. And then the disease burden, and this is where you were headed a moment ago, the disease burden is about 2.2. So we think there's an opportunity there. So a lot of background data. This is all costs. This didn't take into account who's paying for what, whether it's the consumer, the employee paying for it, or the health plan. Oh, I think I hit the wrong one. Just a minute.
So could you go back to that slide 1 second ago?
Yes.
So correct me if I get this wrong, but one way to interpret this and sort of the brass tacks of it would be if we were looking at ways to moderate or control costs, one way would be to have fewer people on the plan. One way would be to have members pay more. And one way would be to invest in strategies to improve the health of members to reduce costs that could be prevented.
Yeah, that well said. That exact those three statements are coming up. You got it.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure where, but those exact points are going to be made in a moment's time. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I'm going as fast as I can go. Current wellness program. You want me to continue to comment on the current?
I can just comment on that.
Okay.
So basically 9% of our workforce is participating in our BC Fit program. That's basically like 140 people out of 1,600. So we get that 9%, about 8.2% of the entire population. And so that includes spouses and dependents that qualify, are participating in our pharmacy management program, which is basically a condition care for diabetes, high blood pressure, depression, trying to manage those disease. So if you include spouses, we're basically looking at about 5.5% of the members are actively participating in our current wellness programs that we have offered.
Okay, so I'll keep us going. So this was your budget for
one question, sorry.
Oh, yes, sir.
Let's go back up.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, so what are the comparisons? What are other businesses, governments, entities? What's their participation in their wellness programs?
Would it be okay with you if I table your question for about 2 slides from?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. Your fiscal year 20 budget was approximately $35 million, and that's pretty much all in, as you can see the items there. Of that, $2 million was related basically to medical and pharmacy costs under your Blue Cross, your 3 medical plans and pharmacy plans at Blue Cross. And then, so I think this is the point that you made a moment ago. There's basically 3 ways home. Of course, we've done some bid work for you with savings opportunities with reinsurance or stop loss coverage and pharmacy coverage, and those have been effectuated onto the plan. But there's kind of, in the future, three paths. Either the county continues to absorb 100% of the cost, or the county starts to share that cost with the employees, and a couple of different ways to share, but that's through employee payroll deductions, which obviously is everybody, and or deductibles and out-of-pocket changes or copay changes. And then the third way, and these aren't exclusive, right? 2 and 3 work together often. And the third way is the population starts to get healthier. And so the risk burden starts to be mitigated a little bit, and that alleviates some of the consumption. So, and this is the journey to do that, what that might look like. So the recommendations were to adopt a health risk assessment, a biometric screening that employees have been going through for the last month, and increase employee premiums. And you see the 6.6 kind of identically matches what the county budget was. So said differently, new money was shared the same between the employee, and it didn't matter what tier of coverage or which medical plan, it was 6.6. And then a change to the drug formulary, moving to what Blue Cross calls net results, and then consider physical therapy resources, and no charge for the on-site clinic were some of the initial recommendations. And so I think it's important that the group understand that health risk assessments or biometric screening are really an awareness campaign where employees or consumers start to understand and link their current health with consumption or cost and disease burden, and how they might be able to impact it. And we've seen when employees go through biometric screening that, generally speaking, and not just employees, spouses, whomever you decide to put through the program, they start to pay more attention to their health status. And there's more awareness, there's more front of mind, and there starts to be migration in their health status. And we've also seen that quite a few members have improvements in the first year. So there's some excitement around the program. But it takes several years to achieve the savings that you want. Well, I'm going to walk you through. So there was a question about some examples. So this is, I have 2 examples for you today. They're both local governments in the state of North Carolina. This is 5 years of data. These expressions are per employee per year. So in the fiscal year 18-19, this particular municipality spent $10,671 per employee per year. So that's all the data just re-expressed. Yes, they have spouses covered, they have dependent children covered. It's just all the data converted to an expression. And so what's the point of this slide? The point of the slide that this particular municipality went through biometric screening, has a clinic, and through their employees and covered spouses participating in the program, they've been able to achieve a fairly flat rate of inflation. Instead of what we consider to be industry average, 6.5 to 7, they're at half of 1%. And so just estimating the savings, and I'm going to put quotations around savings because it's really future cost avoidance. Okay? Yep. So about $9.5 million. And then what did they do? How did this happen? They completed a health risk assessment. If it was appropriate for that particular person to have follow-up appointments at the clinic, they did. And then in exchange for that, there was an incentive structure that influenced the consumer to participate in the programs and to focus on lifestyle and healthy conditions. And so I think there was a question around participation and how did Buncombe County's participation compare? And you see here 74% in 1 year and moved up to 92%. So I know a lot of data. I'll just kind of keep us moving.
Is that the slide that I've been looking forward to?
I apologize. It is.
Okay.
It doesn't sound like that.
Since I've been anticipating it so much.
Yeah.
So I want to hear about wellness.
Okay.
We're at 5% participation in wellness program. Where is everybody else?
They are
74.
74 to 92% of their employees are participating. Is that helpful?
It's depressing, but it's helpful, yes. So before when we had, and thank you for the information because this is what we've been looking forward, to getting. When we looked at, this is before Ms. Pender, your time. The last time we looked at the employee program, I said that I would not support a program that did not have a wellness component built in, because from the company that I was with before I came in government, we did that, and we stopped the increase and improved and made major investments in whether it was cafeterias, workout areas, paying for gym memberships, all these different things, where we made those big investments and everything just started dropping. And then people participated in those wellness programs because, and I'm not throwing off on what we have, we're just dealing with numbers. We're looking at, we have 5%, and the other municipality that you were comparing us to was
depending on the year, they started out at around 75 and they've made it to 92.
They made it to 92. And so to me, that's just I appreciate that information. That's an eye opener, for me. If we can impact our team members and get wellness participation up substantially, it's going to make a lifetime difference, whether they work for Buncombe County or whether they work for somebody else. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The county you're comparing us to, a municipality, are they comparable when it comes to number of employees?
Yes, sir, I think so.
They were 1,977.
Was it? Okay.
Relatively. And I'll do one more. Another local government that
Thanks.
This is similar data, more of a 5-year study. I wouldn't call this completely flat, but relatively close. It's 1.1 on average as opposed to 6.5, and over 5 years this is $9 million, so a little less per year. But again, costs have been flatlining, and it afforded this local government not to have to go up on employee premiums for a while. So that's favorable. And the journey is pretty much the same things. Complete the health risk assessment, submit to biometric screening. If scribed for follow-up appointments, then do the follow-up appointments. And this participation is about 75% right now. So everybody won't participate, but good counts. And I think, Kurt, I think I'll hand it back to you.
All right, thank you. So those were the recommendations that USI posed to staff. So based on USI's recommendations, we made the following proposal to the employees. First, we talked about raising premiums 6.6%. we also asked that all subscribers and their spouses get a health risk assessment. For those, basically what the incentive was is that we were going to raise the premiums, that if you got the health risk assessment, your premiums would stay the way that they are, plus a 6.6% increase. If you didn't get the health risk assessment, your premiums would double, plus the 6.6% increase.
That's actually, not an incentive, that's a penalty.
Well, I think it's depending on how you word it, but that's fine. That was the way that we were trying to get people to participate in the plan for the first year.
Mm-hmm.
So we also decided to switch our formulary from the enhanced formulary to net results. There was some savings there that we could recoup, and most of these changes will be effective depending on what happens, July 1st, 2020. Based on clinic staff, they requested that we keep the $5 copay. So we kept the $5 copay.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So managing how did we message this to employees? Because there's been a lot of questions and a lot of statements about transparency out there and what we did. So first thing that we did is on September 19th, the county manager posted a message on County Central. We sent emails out to retirees, and we scheduled 12 different meetings where people could come, and we would present our findings, we would present our case to the employees, ask them for feedback. We tried to get different times, doing it on evenings. We did one on Saturday. We went to the landfill. Nonetheless, we went to 12 different places and gave employees 12 different opportunities to attend and retirees to learn about the proposed changes that I just mentioned. In addition, we specifically asked at all those things to please give us feedback. And that was one thing that was important to us, is what employees liked about the proposal and what they didn't like about the proposal. On October 1st, we also scheduled a webinar for people who couldn't attend the meetings to come to. We held that webinar on October 7th. In addition, we posted the healthcare, the presentation, the PowerPoint on County Central, and we also had an FAQ section, so when employees asked questions, we would respond to those questions. On October 18th, we held open enrollment, and those changes were also in the open enrollment packet. Those packets went to all employees and all retirees. Finally, on December 5th, we posted information about when the health risk assessments would be conducted, or the health fairs. There were 14 different times for people to participate. In addition, we answered questions that employee posed on the County Central website. So we tried to message this and try to get out and let people know what we were doing and why we were doing it. So one thing that I want you to consider with the plan design, we did not make any changes to the deductibles, the coinsurance, the out-of-pocket maximum, or the copay. So we basically left those all the same. What we did change, once again, was the 6.6% increase, and this is how that would affect. The highest would be the standard family plan, where they would have a $6.27 increase. In addition, we asked for the health risk assessment. Once again,
Can you go back one? I apologize.
Sure thing.
Okay, thanks.
So in addition, we held the health risk assessment, where we once again asked employees to go to the health fair that happened the last 2 weeks of January. We had 1,573 people attend those sessions. So we had a lot of participants. We also allowed employees to get their HRA from their doctor, and based on the latest numbers we have, 117 of those have been mailed in. So we're close to 1,700 people that have been participated in this process. This is what the health risk assessment measures: weight, BMI, your waist measurement, blood pressure, pulse rate, glucose or blood sugar, your total cholesterol, your HDL, your LDL, and your triglycerides. These results are confidential and sent to the employees These should be mailed out in the next week or two for everyone who went to the, who got a screening should be getting those shortly. So what will happen is employees will be placed based on their numbers. They'll be placed in risk categories. And if you have 2 or more risks, we will require that you have 1 visit with either the health clinic or 1 visit with your physical doctor as a follow-up to go over your health scores and try to devise ways to try to help you be healthier. Employees, once again, don't have to go to the health clinic. They can go to their own doctor to have that thing done. So we're trying to give people as many options as they can. So how we vision this this moving forward is that, once again, we'll institute the new premiums effective July 1st, 2020. Then we will conduct another round of health assessments in November of 2020 for the 2021 plan year. And then beginning January 1st, 2021, there will be a 3-tiered system. So if you don't get your HRA, you will basically pay the regular rate. If you get your HRA, you will get a discounted rate. However, if you get your HRA and you either improve on your numbers or you have 0 or 1 numbers, there will be an extra discounted rate. So basically that's where the incentive for people will be to work on improving their numbers so that you can get an extra discount on the premiums that you pay. But what I do want to say is just getting the HRA, you're going to get the significant discount. It's not, we understand that not everybody's going to be able to improve, but we want those people who at least participate to still get a significant discount on their premiums.
So just to clarify quickly, so in November, folks will take those tests again, and that'll be the comparison that's made
Exactly.
that then determines
Exactly.
which of these, okay.
Exactly.
One thing, you said 1,573, going back a couple slides, and 117 use their regular doctor. How many are we talking about? I know there's 1,600 employees. This is just the spouse and employee. So somewhere around what?
The total number that we estimate is about 2,200 total that should be getting a health risk assessment.
Oh, okay, so we're around 70%, 75% then. Okay.
Yes, and I was told, and they can talk about the participation rates, but I was told that was pretty good for your first time out.
Okay.
So, okay, I'm back to that. So the difference between the 2,000 and the 1,700, those 300 folks, are we doubling their insurance?
Well, it depends on whether they get a health risk assessment before March 15th, 2020. That's the deadline. Yes, if you approve the changes, then.
Well, I mean, I'd like to know what communication we're doing with those folks. I mean, that's a big deal.
Well, we understand. We've
People
tried to
could
send
quit
out.
over that.
I'm sorry.
People could, leave over that. I like everything else I've heard though, but that does concern me.
So they have until March 15th to do the health screening. And I'm sorry if you've already mentioned this and I missed it, but there's still opportunities to do that with the county, not just with their own personal doctor. So they could do that.
Right. We're planning on holding another sort of a makeup. We're planning on holding a makeup on March 5th for people who didn't get the health or who, didn't know about it or didn't hear about it. So we're planning on March 5th to hold another session where people can come and get the free health risk assessment.
And they can do that during their work hours.
Yes.
They'll be allowed to do that, and everyone will be informed about that.
Yes.
Yeah, and I would think that would be, for me, I mean, I'm just thinking that would be a source of pride within the county that we are going out and making sure that those people get, because we've already said that if they will do that, then we're going to see an improvement in them, personally. And so it should be, I would want to seek out whoever those people are. Be pretty, kind of hard to do, maybe hard to do, but doable, right? Is just to try to get all those folks to get that screening, however you get it, get it instead of you know, if you don't get it by the 15th, I'm not saying you extend it, but if you don't get it by that date, we're going to double your, you know, your penalty. We're going to double your, I mean, that should be our goal, is to make sure those people get that, you know. If we got to go and speak to them personally or whatever we need to do, to me, so.
That's a great point, and that's something that we will do. I mean, we don't, it's not our intent. We're not looking like, ooh, we want to double premiums. The idea was we were trying to set up a way so that people would want to get the health risk assessment, and unfortunately, that was the way that we decided that was the best way to motivate people.
But when I saw that, you know, where's the slide where you're giving the discounts? No, that's not it.
No, I think that
No, you were listing that if they do this by.
Oh, okay. You were talking about the. I get what you were talking about. Was this the one that you were talking?
Okay, now when I read that motivates me. Okay, that I want the regular rates here, but I get that, I get a discounted rate. If I get this, I get an extra discounted rate. That's what.
But on that point, so going forward though, when we say that the regular rate is if you have not done an HRA, right? Although it sounds like the expectation is that the vast majority of our employees will do this. So I don't know, is that terminology? Because the regular rate will actually be kind of an exception.
The regular
right?
rate will end up being the highest rate. That will be the rate that we set, and then we will give discounts based on participating in the wellness program.
So how big will the different levels of discount be to the regular rate? I think you've described how they are in 2020, but in 2021, I mean, we say it's discounted, but really, like, sort of compared to the status quo, it simply means it's not going up, right?
Well, I mean, still,
like
when
the
you
incentive is is kind of a negative incentive, right? So in terms of, like, compared to status quo, the discounted rate will go up some, right? Because there's also a further discounted rate, which I assume is like the closest to the status quo, right? Because we have such a generous plan. Am I thinking about that in the right way?
Well, I think that, I mean, I don't know which.
Actually, a scenario that's lower than even where we're
What
at
do you
today.
mean by status quo might be?
The way the plan exists right now, like
So,
2019.
like, if we compare us to our peers, right now, by doubling our rates, we're getting closer to where our peers are in terms of.
I'm not talking about our peers. I'm talking about Buncombe County's current plans in 2019 for our employees. If someone gets in the extra discounted rate plan in 2021, will their rates actually be lower than the current 2019 plan or a little bit higher?
It should, I mean, depending on what we decide to do, because obviously we haven't set rates for 2021, but I would look at that you would have the regular rate, then you would have the large discount, and then you would probably have another 5% for the extra discount. So,
but those rates, those specific rates haven't been set yet. So this is kind of the concept of how it'll play out, but the specific numbers still need to be populated in the future. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Let me say, maybe make it easy on me here. Why couldn't down there you show us numbers instead of percentages and discount? And, you know, a discount could be 50 cents or $5, or an increase could be $1 or $50. I mean, I'd like to see some number, you know, of exactly what it's going to be. And I think what Chairman's saying is we're going to go up 6.6% no matter what, right? So really the wording says we can be a discount, which that's not discount below what 19 is right now.
So here would be the rate structure effective July, effective July 1st, 2020. So you can see there that we have the standard plan with the HRA, we have the standard plan without the HRA, and then we have what the increase is per pay period.
And I'll jump in here. Now, that's the only numbers that we have today. As we just mentioned to Brownie, we don't have 21 numbers. The goal would be, depending on our rate increase from Blue Cross, we hope that we can stabilize that rate going into next year. Should that happen, there would be a deeper discount down to 26, which is what I think Brownie's asking. If you
Right.
participate, and then we can share that reduction with the employees as well. That would be the intent.
But what about them numbers right there, July 1st of 2019? If we could see them numbers.
For 2020?
No, 2019, 1 year back.
Oh, 20.
Our current
I can go
numbers
way
compared.
back. So if you look at this slide here, you look at the top number for standard plan, buy-up, and core. Those are the current rates that we have right now. So it's like 25 for the standard plan individual, 35 for buy-up, and 20 for core. So that top line, that would be the rates that we have right now.
So based on what we know right now, I think, Robert, this gets to what you're asking, that the amount we're currently paying is roughly equivalent to the amount you will pay if you enroll in the HRA program.
Correct.
So it'll help stabilize your rates. You won't face, is that what you're getting at?
Exactly.
Okay, yeah.
And then if you don't, I mean, you got 2 of the 5 or 6 things. Now what number are you at if, you go above, what was it, 0 to 2 or 1 to 3?
If you have risk factors, your rate would still be the discounted rate. Even if you could have 10 risk factors and you would still get the rate. You wouldn't get, so anybody who gets the HRA is going to get the lesser rates for starting July 1st.
Yeah.
Regardless of what your risk factors are.
Right.
Come 2021, then if you still have your risk factors and you didn't work or you haven't improved or anything like that, you would still get the discounted rate for getting the HRA. You wouldn't get the extra discounted rate because you didn't improve on your numbers or you don't have 0 or 1 risk factors.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does, and I think it's going to answer a lot of people that's been listening or watching on TV. That's what they've been asking me. Okay.
Okay.
So the only thing I want to add is that, I'm going to go back to the penalty, okay? From a return to us, that is not going to make any kind of substantial difference. We're going to have to gain participation from these folks. We got 5% on wellness. That's a whole nother discussion, So we're going to have to figure out a way to gain participation from those folks. They've got to do that. That health risk assessment. It's good for them. If they're comfortable in the confidentiality of it, if they're comfortable with whoever's doing it, and it's not like going to your doctor and my doctor telling me again that there's no chance, Joe, for you growing hair back. As long as I'm not getting something that makes me, feel bad about it, then there's a way to get everybody to come and do that health risk assessment. There's no reason to do that penalty. Because if you go back and you look at, and I'll get off my horse after this. If you're talking about an employee with a child, and you're going, there it is, from 74 to 149, that's net money. Okay, so we got to figure. I'm just going to throw that out there. We got to figure that out. Thanks.
Right.
So when the chairman says great, that means it's time for me to
Keep moving forward. All right.
Yes.
I will try to plow through this as quickly as possible.
All right, thank you.
One of the other things that we did is that we're switching the formulary to net results. We estimate roughly 89 people may have to switch medications or get approval from Blue Cross and Blue Shield. They're basically moving a bunch of drugs to where you are required to get doctor's approval before using them right now. So we're looking that may affect 89 people. We also estimate that approximately 300 people will have their tiers changed. So they go from a 0 copay to a $10 copay. We estimate, though, that for a full mature year, we could save up to $1 million by making this switch in the formulary. The first year, $750, and for the 6 months, because we're only going to have 6 months of this, we estimate approximately $350,000 in savings. And I missed a 0. But so certain drugs are discouraged by the formulary. For all these drugs, there are alternatives. If the employee wants to use one of these drugs without a penalty, their doctor must certify that it's medically necessary or receive prior approval. So we posted this, just so that you know how we messaged this, is we posted the list of all the drugs that would be discouraged on County Central for people to look at. And I've had people call me, and we've talked to Blue Cross and Blue Shield. So we've really tried to message this to people so they understand what drugs are being affected. And most of these are fairly, they're specialty, they're non-branded specialty drugs. So it's not, common drugs that people use. This is just to give you an example of our current drug tier. For tier 1, you pay 0. For tier 2, you pay 10, tier 3, 40, and tier 4, 50, and then tier 5, which is our specialty drugs, which are really expensive, between $50 and $100. Based on the changes, we're looking at 58 people will go from 0 to a $10, or 58 drugs will go from 0 to 10. That's pretty self-explanatory as to the premiums will or the copays will increase. And this is a list that we posted on County Central for all employees to look at drugs regarding the tier changes so that they can see what drugs and what they can do to do that. So we've been trying to really stay ahead of this and give people a lot of advance notice as to what's going on. So one of the things we told employees is to make sure that you understand that your co-payments will count towards your out-of-pocket maximum. So if you have higher co-payments, that may get you to your out-of-pocket maximum sooner. We've also encouraged employees to sign up for flexible spending accounts to help pay for that. So the other thing that we've proposed is an on-site physical therapist to help with those musculoskeletal problems. This physical therapist will be free to employees and other dependents on the health plan. We're either going to have it, we haven't decided whether we're going to have it on-site or we're going to contract with somebody who has multiple locations throughout the county. We want to try to make it as convenient as possible for people, but this will hopefully come on. We estimate that hopefully we'll save for a full year $350,000 or $300,000. We put an RFP out on February 11th, and so we're currently waiting to see who we're going to hire. But I'm really excited about this program. I think it will be helpful, and hopefully will reduce musculoskeletal costs by giving people easy access to physical therapy, much in the same vein as we use our family health clinic. So dental, we kept dental the same. We opened it up for enrollment. We had approximately 50 more people sign up for 2020. We kept everything the same as 2019. So this, based on the changes that we've proposed, just to put a number on what we proposed for 6 months, we're looking at approximately $825,000 in saving or in reduced costs to the county based on these changes that we've proposed. And that's for only 6 months. So that is for July through December. So double that number for a full year. So we look to save a lot more for a full year. So I'd like to ask Katie Queen, there were a lot of questions that were raised in public comment about the health risk assessment. So I asked Katie Queen from Synergy to come here and answer some of those questions, or if you have any questions, sort of to give you an idea as to how they operate and what we did.
Hey, I'm Katie Queen with Synergy Healthcare. We are an on-site clinic management and wellness management company out of Denver, North Carolina. We work with many local governments and municipalities and thousands of their employees, retirees, and spouses. A couple of these things on the slide I'm going to address as they were brought up for public comment. There was a concern that the health fair lacked privacy. I can say that all of our stations are personal and screened off for every participant so they have their own personal experience with one of our technicians. Our staff is instructed not to say any values out loud. If a patient so just wants their weight, the technician has to point to the paper and let them know what their weight is. They cannot verbally say that out loud. I will say, compared to other companies that do what we do, some actually do not even have screens to section off each individual station. Synergy finds that that is very important to have. The people that perform our blood draws are licensed nurses and phlebotomists. We require a 5-year minimum experience in their current field, and they must work in a medical setting where they are sticking at least 10 patients every day. There was a rumor that someone had a blood-borne pathogen exposure. An incident report was collected and reviewed, and it was determined there was no exposure, also reviewed by our medical director. I personally interviewed the patient that was involved with this and the technician it took place with. Next slide. That tests were inaccurate. The county chose to go with Synergy Healthcare because we do venipuncture blood draw, which is a vein blood draw, versus a finger stick. There is an 8.9% variance, plus or minus, in a finger stick versus a venipuncture. When you're doing a wellness program and you want your employees to find value in your wellness program, you want those values to be correct. Venipuncture is the best way and the most accurate way to do that.
And I think there was some concern that when you would draw blood, you drew a lot.
Right.
And for those that have never had that done, that's,
yeah,
you draw 2 or 3.
Yes, we draw 1 SST tube, which is 1 tube of blood. We do have other clients that want additional testing, such as hemoglobin A1C. Maybe they're doing a tobacco cessation program and they want the tobacco tested, and that requires an extra tube of blood. But for a standard health risk assessment, we're measuring a lipid panel and a glucose panel, which is just 1 SST tube. The county also had its consultant research whether the health risk assessment would violate any state or federal law, and the answer to that was no. And I don't know if you want to elaborate on that anymore. Good? Okay. Any questions from me or anything else that you guys have heard of that I can address? No? Thank you for your time.
So much.
So that's about it. So we just wanted to kind of show you where we're at. So we started open enrollment in October and early November. We're finished with that. We've got the cards out by January 1st, so we're done with that. So we held the health fairs, and that process is still in process, but we've done a majority of that. And then the idea would be is to institute the changes effective July 1st. So with that, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. And I thank you for your time.
All right, thanks, Kurt.
Just got a comment. I just want to highlight 2 things. And for our next time we get a briefing on this, one is the penalty avoidance, trying to figure out how to get everybody signed up and do that. And then have a good long discussion on wellness and what that looks like with other places and how we can improve and get all the people that work at Buncombe County healthier. I think they have a lot higher quality life.
Right. Any other questions or comments at this time? I do want to, this is an important policy, and so we will take public comment on it. So if there's no other comments now, we can go ahead and do that now. I guess, but before we do that, I do have one just kind of process question. I mean, kind of regardless of, where we come down on this, I feel like with there's been this process question about whether the commission is required to vote on this or not, right? And some folks have made the case that they do. We've heard the argument that it doesn't create, it's not really a structural change, so therefore the personnel ordinance doesn't require it. I guess when I've looked at it, to me it's been just frankly maybe a little bit unclear. I could kind of see arguments on both sides. So I'm glad we're talking about it tonight. We'll just, we'll vote on it. And so there's no question about where we stand on it. But just going forward, let's say we're 12 months from now and thinking about what's happening next year, I'm just wondering if there might be, I think we either need to maybe put some more detail in the personnel ordinance to make it really clear, here are the parameters that we don't consider structural changes, therefore, it can just be approved as part of the budget, or the management can make that decision. Because to me, it seems a little unclear. So I'm just thinking as separate from what we decide tonight, we might want to look at that just so we're not constantly having kind of a process argument over what does the commission have to do versus what, the management can kind of do and look at. So that's just a comment, but not
So Commissioner, just so you
Yes,
know,
ma'am.
we are looking at the personnel ordinance, not for that specific issue, but there's a lot of things in there that our HR director will love to see us review
Right.
and bring to your attention. So that'll be a whole work session in the coming months.
Right, because I don't want us to be in a position where sort of every relatively minor and routine change, has to come to the county commission. I'm glad we're doing this tonight, but just, so maybe thinking that through a little bit more.
Yeah.
All right, are there any members of the public who would like to comment on this agenda item? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Hannah Honeycutt. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. Thank you for considering this important policy change tonight. I've heard a lot of the discussion about the incentivization. I think a lot of county employees would be behind that. But there's another proposed solution that I would like the county commissioners to consider if we are going to move forward with a wellness program. I would point out that a lot of county employees are really concerned about their privacy, their ability to choose their own medical professionals, and the potential for discrimination when the county has access to this information or potentially has access to this information. One potential change that would allow those concerns to go away would be if county employees were allowed to see their own doctor, which it sounds like we are currently allowed to under the plan Mr. Euler set out tonight. And we're also allowed to see our own doctors if there are issues that need further attention. But we still have to submit that form to Synergy. And I think a lot of folks really have a problem with providing this third-party company with their protected medical information and then receiving a health risk assessment score from them. So we would ask that our doctor be able to certify our participation in the blood work that the county is requiring, and that our medical doctor address any concerns that arise from those medical tests in lieu of sending the information off to Synergy if that's what the employee so chooses. I would like to comment on our current wellness program. Our current wellness program provides employees every 6 months with the opportunity to get 8 more hours of leave time. This is a really attractive option for folks who have the ability to take 8 hours of leave time, but a lot of our social workers and law enforcement professionals and other professionals have so much comp time built up that the 8 hours doesn't mean anything to them. So I think really looking at other ways to incentivize participation in a wellness program would be helpful as well, and I would ask the commissioners to please consider that before voting on any policy tonight. The pharmacy program that was mentioned, if that's the pharmacy program that I'm familiar with, you meet with a pharmacist to talk about the medications you're taking. If I don't take any medications, I would have no reason to see the pharmacist as part of that program. So that could account for why the county participation in that particular wellness program is so low. So I would ask the commissioners to gain information about these wellness programs and consider other reasons that employees might not be participating in them. Otherwise, I would just like to thank the commissioners for taking the time to consider this change that's being proposed by our administration, and I'm thankful for our administration allowing employees the opportunity to be heard without any concerns about retaliation. That really does mean a lot to the employees, so thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Hannah. All right, anybody else? Mr. Rice in the back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. In lieu of transparency, what I've seen up here on the screen in the conversation that took place here, I don't see it nowhere. Do you have it on the web? Coming here and seeing just a little blurb on the agenda doesn't give me any information to make a informed thought on here. So I'm just asking, where's the transparency at? Because if you're going to vote on it today, the only one that knows anything about it is you and the staff and the people that come and made the presentation. So before you vote on it, I'd ask it to go out to the public in some fashion here that we might be able to look at it more detail and not be thrown in their lap. It's a big item. The other question is that HCA, they brought out mission, the politician all lined up after all is said and done. And I'd like to know how the employees has been impacted on their health insurance and stuff at HCA or Mission Hospital, how that's affected Buncombe County's 1,600 employees. I think that'd be a reasonable question since we're hearing about HCA and all their dirty work. I think that'd be good to look at. On the employees' wellness thing, I am so excited. I just can't contain myself. Out of all these millions of dollars that you all have put into greenways and trails, have a survey done and just see how many of your employees and their family members use these trails, and we'll see if our money is being affected or effective for what they're doing. And see about your services the county provides, and they brag about it. Let's see how much they're actually using your services, or who is benefiting from your services. Because, you know, tourism don't do no good for us. Them people goes back home. I do a lot of walking on trails and a lot of hiking. So I've went hundreds of miles in the last few months. So believe it or not, it sure does make you healthier. You know, I can arm wrestle either one of them, you know. So I'm really concerned about the health and the wellness of our community. When you get our age, that's what you focus on mostly. Now, just to throw in a caveat here, my insurance has went up $40 a month on my supplement. Not because of my health, because our area that we live in, the insurance has went up so much on everyone and the cost factors on risk that it has raised mine $40 a month. That's $480 a year. That's more than my property tax. And that's on a deduct plan. How about that? Think about it.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. All right, anyone else? All right, commissioners.
Got a question for Kurt?
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Don, sorry. Come on up.
Health insurance is near and dear to me because I've been sleeping with my health insurance agency for 50 years. And when I get all these marketing calls, I tell them that, and guess what? They hang up. I do think that you shouldn't move this to where you don't discuss it in public. I think that's what commissioners are elected for. But I did take a picture of a slide that was put up there tonight where we're talking about the money and the rewards and the penalties. And I consulted with my expert, and my expert tells me this: because Buncombe County is self-funded, they're not governed by a lot of the other rules and regulations that Blue Cross Blue Shield would have to operate by, because they are self-funded. So that does change the picture of what you're seeing and how it does affect the picture, okay? So that's just a point I think you need to know about, because that does explain some of the things that they can do as far as what you got to do. And medicine, having another man's kidney in my body, I take about 12 different types of medicines a day. And I have to go through this process every year of Tier 4, Tier 3, where to get it, how to get it, is there a generic or not. So that's nothing that nobody else shouldn't be doing, because everybody's doing it if they're taking medicine, okay? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right, now, commissioners, you had a comment.
Question for Ms. Sheeler. Yes, sir. So the comment was made about the doctor being able to certify some results. Would there be a issue with that?
Well, I think we're already allowing it. The problem is that who is going to keep track of all of that information? We have hired Synergy to keep track of that, because we kind of have to have a wall between the county, the employees' health information, and county management. So we have, to maintain that wall, so, you know, because I don't want to know anybody's individual results. So to maintain that wall, so we've hired Synergy to do that. So that's why employees send their results to Synergy, because they're the clearinghouse. Then Synergy will be the ones to contact people and let people know, hey, you haven't gotten your follow-up visit, or hey, you haven't got that. That's what we've hired them to do.
Okay, thanks.
I have a couple of questions. How many staff members have expressed concerns outside of the ones that we've directly heard from in chambers?
I honestly don't know.
I've answered questions. I think, we've had a bunch of comments on the County Central page. I mean, if you ask for a number, I'd say maybe 20 people have commented, but it hasn't been.
Complaints. It has been more logistic questions.
Right.
When can my husband come? Or can you have a different schedule so my husband can make the HRAs? I'm looking over to Dan to help me because he's the one that has. I'm sorry. Dan has been the one that really helps us with the questions, so I'm looking to get an idea from him. There were more questions and clarifications than there were complaints, I would say.
I'm just wondering why the grievance policy wasn't specifically followed in terms of the concerns from staff coming directly to us immediately versus following a policy that's in place for grievances. Or would this fall outside of what's in place?
No, employees have the right to file a grievance on that, but also they have the right to go to you directly. So that there's nothing that we can really, there's no process where we can say, hey, you can't contact your commissioner if they have a question on that. So that's sort of why we do have a process, and we encourage employees to file grievances and go through that. But if they want to go to you directly, we really don't have any control over that.
Sure, I certainly understand that. I'm just asking the question.
Sure.
To understand if anyone else had considered that or that you all knew of versus just coming directly to us.
And not to put Stoney on the spot, but I believe there was an issue that came to Stoney that he's addressed with this issue.
There were
as well.
2 grievances that were filed.
Okay.
Well, that's good to know.
All righty, other questions?
Just another comment, sorry. I do think that a lot of the information that we've seen didn't get posted on here that it should be posted on there, because the only thing we've got on here is a letter that we're gonna talk about an increase, and there was a lot of good information in there. I also would encourage, when you're using those, is if there's something that should jump out at us, that should concern us or something, maybe use some red, use some other, colors in there so it can kind of, because we should be concerned about penalties. We should be concerned about large increases and the wellness differences. I mean, we're not looking to present this to us to where we're going to feel really great about it. We want that information very accurate, hard, so that we can, if there's something that we got to do or we got to say and stand up for, then we can say, okay, this should be fixed, or this is okay. So I mean, like the wellness difference, that should have been like boom. I mean, somebody should have said something, and maybe some suggestions, or maybe we can get that in the future. Maybe these folks can help us with that, since they did such a good job on the other information. That would be, maybe they could help us with that. So.
Right. I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposed changes.
Second.
Further discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you all for the great information, and let's try to get the information that wasn't posted on the website.
Also, any additional questions, sorry, Chairman, that was given to us tonight? There was a few. That those are documented, and that we have those, and that we follow back up on all of those that was presented, including from the commissioners.
All right, very good.
Thanks.
Okay, next item is an amendment to the tobacco ordinance, edition of vaping / electronic cigarettes. And Jan Shepard is going to start us off on this one.
Good evening, and thank you for having me this evening. I'm here to talk to you about some recommended proposed changes to the smoking ordinance, 50.1. So vaping and e-cigarette use is of great concern to public health, and I believe we are all aware of the concerns circulating in our community with increased use of these products, particularly among our youth. As a nation, we've made great strides over the past 2 decades in reducing smoking exposure and exposure to secondhand smoke. This was accomplished in part through local policy such as Buncombe County Smoking Ordinance 50.1. So tonight, I'd like to present to you that the Buncombe County Health and Human Services Board respectfully recommends that the County Commission amend 50.1 of the county ordinance, smoking prohibited in county buildings, on county grounds, or in county vehicles, as well as Section 13, tobacco use policy of the county's personnel ordinance, to include the prohibition of vaping or e-cigarette use in all applicable sections of the two ordinances. So the health dangers associated with vaping or the use of e-cigarettes is gaining attention both nationally and in Buncombe County. The North Carolina Poison Control handled well over 200 exposures to e-cigarette products in 2017 and 18, and about 60% of these cases involved children under the age of 6. According to the CDC, e-cigarettes are not safe for youth, young adults, pregnant women, or adults who do not currently use tobacco products. So the authority to enact 50.1, which is the General Statute 130A 498, is specific to smoking. So we would propose that the Commission would approve adding an addendum 50.1.1, which really discusses just the addition of control of the e-cigarette and vaping in those areas. So with your approval, I would like to read to you the proposed changes to the county ordinance. Would that be okay? Okay, so the authority, this section is enacted pursuant to authority granted to the provisions of General Statute 153A-121 as an exercise of the police power to protect, promote, and preserve the public health, welfare, and safety of individuals in county buildings, on county grounds, or in local vehicles, and General Statute 153A-169, care and use of county property in sites of county buildings. There is one definition. This would be e-cigarette, an electronic oral device that employs a mechanical heating element, battery, or electronic circuit, regardless of shape or size, and that can be used to heat a liquid nicotine solution or any other substance, and the use or inhalation of which simulates smoking. The term shall include any such device, whether manufactured, distributed, marketed, or sold as an e-cigarette, e-cigar, e-pipe, or under any other product name or descriptor. Section C says that e-cigarettes are prohibited in any vehicle or building owned, occupied, or leased to the county where the use of tobacco products is prohibited, or within 50 feet of any public entrance to such building. Implementation requirements are as follows. The person in charge of the county buildings and vehicles shall post signs indicating that use of e-cigarettes are restricted. The person in charge of county buildings and vehicles or his or her designee shall direct a person who is using an e-cigarette in a prohibited area to cease and, if the person does not comply, shall have the authority to issue a civil citation. Section D, civil citation. Violations of the e-cigarette prohibition are subject to civil citation of $100 per offense. The penalty may be recovered by the county in a civil action in the nature of debt if the offender does not pay the penalty within 20 days after being cited. Violations of this article shall result in civil penalties and not entail criminal sanctions. In addition, county employees who violate this ordinance may be subject to discipline up to and including termination. The second part of this recommendation is to amend the Personnel Ordinance, Section 13, a tobacco product policy as follows. No person shall use any tobacco product, including but not limited to snuff, chewing tobacco, smokeless tobacco, e-cigarette or vaping tool, smoking, carrying, or possessing a lighted cigar, cigarette, pipe, or other lighted smoking equipment, paraphernalia, while in any Buncombe County building, on Buncombe County grounds, or in a Buncombe County vehicle. So that is the recommendation from the Health and Human Services Board to add 50.1.1 to the current ordinance 50.1.
All right, thank you, Jan. Commissioners, any questions? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Any members of the public who wish to comment on the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Jerry.
Jerry, okay. Sorry, I didn't see your hand go up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I was here when they passed this tobacco thing to begin with, so I want to understand, is this a law from the state of North Carolina that is saying to do this, or is this something yins are doing at the local level and you don't need the state law to tell you can do the amendment to this?
Okay, thanks. It's a local ordinance. It's not a state ordinance, it's local.
So you ain't got no state law to represent what you're doing?
All right. Yes, yes, sir. Yeah.
I just want to say from first-hand experience, when I was a kid, I used to chew tobacco, went years not, and picked up a can a little while ago and then put it back down, you know what I mean? I'm not that big advocate, but we did used to be the tobacco state, you know what I mean? Like he said, there's not really a law to it. We kind of should have less laws in a lot of ways. And at the same time, whatever happened to freedom of choice and stuff like that. If y'all ever went down to vacation in some of the other tourist areas and stuff like that we have, one thing that kills it when people get there and they find that, someone steps out to vape and then all of a sudden they got a cop bothering them or something, you know what I mean? And that can actually affect who comes here and who don't. I'm actually personally, since I got the time, and especially with the medical stuff, hemp is okay. Weed actually played a fact when I was going through a back surgery, or this close to getting back surgery I didn't have to go through. And when they were talking on the medical stuff also, I started doing inversion therapy, and the marijuana actually helped relax the nerves. We didn't have a bunch of hemp stuff at the time, but it did save me from a surgery. So when y'all are considering this stuff, just, I guess, think outside the box,
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else? All right.
Got a question, Chairman. On the civil penalty, do we do that on normal tobacco use? That's written in there?
Commissioner Belcher, regulating tobacco, there's actually a specific regulatory scheme that's dictated by the state as to how you can charge somebody for smoking. We're using a different, we can't use the same scheme for regulating e-cigarettes, especially because for smoking it's an infraction, which means that you have to go to criminal court. And we are just basically setting this as a civil penalty so that we don't have to go charge people criminally.
Just a quick clarification, and so I can be better informed. Regarding the civil citation, it sounds like the person in charge of the county buildings and vehicles would be authorized to issue a civil citation. Can you just walk us through, am I misreading that?
Nope, I read the same thing.
Can you walk us through what that actually means? Like how, the who and the how and the what?
Well, probably we have facility managers or people who, are like a Mike Stanberry, or we have people that are responsible for the grounds. So the idea would be is that they would be delegated the authority that if they did see someone vaping, we don't have this problem a lot, so hopefully it won't come up. But the idea would be is that they would come up to that person, ask them to stop. If they refuse to stop or continue, then we would issue a civil citation, which is basically a $100 penalty. They then have the choice to pay that penalty. If not, it becomes a debt, and probably the normal way that we would collect that is through the state's debt set-off program. And that would give them a chance to appeal if they disagree with the fine or whatnot.
Okay, thanks. That's a new, so civil citation is a so the county would issue a fine of $100, and the term for that is civil citation. This isn't the kind of citations we're typically hearing about through the.
No, this is not criminal at all, so they won't have to go to criminal. There will be no court fees. There will be
Okay,
nothing associated with it.
And the county has the authority as an entity
Yes.
to, okay, thanks, that's helpful. I wasn't aware of some of those things.
So if this doesn't happen that much, why would we want it in there? Because I'm okay with everything except number D. I'm having a problem with the fourth item on some things.
Yeah,
that number 4.
It's the number
What's the
4,
deal?
I think. It's just number
Make
4.
it 3B, items at 3A and B.
Yeah,
Good.
we'll renumber that for you, Commissioner Belcher. So many of the strategies and successful strategies that we use in public health are really intended for prevention. I think we are seeing a large amount of an accelerated use of e-cigarettes and vaping tools, of which we have had some pretty adverse reactions and actions associated with that across our country, across the state.
Can
and
you
in
just speak
Buncombe
to the
County.
civil part for me, please?
So, I'm sorry.
The civil
Like,
part.
oh, I thought you asked me why would we do this?
Yeah, what, no,
Oh.
why would we want, since we don't have that much of a problem with item D, why would we even want that in there? Civil action.
Help me with that,
Well,
Kurt, I'm sorry.
I guess the question would be is that if we don't have some kind of penalty to deal with, I know,
there.
here we go again.
It is again.
But if we don't have some kind of penalty,
Totally
then
difference of
then-
philosophy.
then there's really no reason to
Okay.
restrict it.
It's kind of like an incentive to not do it.
So anyhow, it's not. It's kind of like setting you up for somebody. I see some problems with that. So do we have a motion and a second on this already?
Yep.
Okay, so how do I'm gonna try it again.
Make a motion to remove that.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion to remove item D and support everything else in the amendment. I'm gonna make a motion to do that.
Is there a second? Motion. Okay, there's a second. Further discussion on the motion? I mean, I think the logic of if there's no consequence for it, then someone just say, don't do that because I'm asking you to not do it. I mean, if there's not some consequence, we should just not do this, is my thought. So for that reason, I'll vote against it.
But if I'm in charge, then I'm gonna come out and I'm gonna confront you over that. And you don't put that down, I'm gonna fine you $100.
You can't say that. That would be lying.
What?
If we took that out, they couldn't say that.
Well, that's why I wanna take it out.
What would you want to do, though?
I'm gonna take my second back, okay?
Okay. If you are vaping on, if I saw you vaping on public property, I would talk to you about it now, because it's not good for you. Okay, but if you're vaping on, we would have a policy that says that you can't do it. That policy is enough for people to,
We're not taking more public comment on this.
for the most part, to not do it. I just have a problem with someone having to go and tell somebody that, let me move this down here.
Commissioner Presley, do you have a comment?
I guess this applies to county employees or anyone in county buildings right?
Yeah.
So what happens like the building we're in now that's partly leased by the bank downstairs and somebody says, I'm coming to the bank, I ain't doing county business. County building, but TDA would have to have the same policy, or TD Bank or whatever, have to have the same policy, right?
Well, in the common areas, so I guess theoretically that they could vape in TD Bank. But if they're in the common areas such as the walkway or any of the other floors that aren't leased by TD Bank, then they could not vape.
It's pretty much the same as what.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, but how are you gonna get there besides coming through the door? But I'm going to the bank.
All right.
Yeah, I think we're just going around. I'm gonna take my second back, Joe.
Okay, all in favor of the motion
Can't
to
do that.
remove,
I'm sorry, go ahead. He tried to take his second back. He can't do that. Go ahead.
to remove item D, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. It fails. Back to the original
See that.
motion. All in favor of the motion to approve? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed?
No.
All right. Great. It passes.
You gotta get it together, y'all.
Those item 4s I'm having an issue with tonight.
Okay. Next up, thank you, Jan. Next up is the Mountain Community Capital Fund update and term extension. And Lynn Smith is here to
Lord, this should be
explain
easy.
this item.
Good evening, Chairman Newman, Commissioners. I am Lynn Smith, and I'm standing before you as the Chair of the Mountain Community Capital Fund. My purpose today is to provide you all with an update on the fund and to ask that the fund's termination date be extended. The fund expired on February 1st, 2020. The request for this extension does not involve any additional funds. The fund is a joint sponsorship between Buncombe County government and the city of Asheville, partnering with Self-Help Credit Union, Mountain BizWorks, and Carolina Small Business Fund. The intent of the fund is to guarantee loans for small business owners who may otherwise have difficulty receiving funding. And I'll start. So this is just to kind of give you our update. On October 18th, the fund was realized. On April 5th, the committee had their first official meeting. On May 3rd, committee members elected officers. And on October 10th, we had our official community launch at the Eddington Community Center. This is the flyer we sent out just to notify the community about the upcoming launch. And these are some of the pictures where we had Commissioner Al Whiteside and Councilman Keith Young on hand to lead a panel discussion. And here are a list of our community members, of our board members. And our ask, we're asking the commissioners to extend the expiration date of the Mountain Community Capital Fund an additional 5 years, setting the new termination date to February 1st, 2025. This extension will allow us to continue to grow the awareness, increase participants in the fund, and really make an impact in our community so that we can continue to use the funding that we were allocated. And again, this extension does not require any additional funds. Any questions?
How much is in the fund now?
Currently, there's $400,000, $200,000 from Asheville City and $200,000 from Buncombe County.
How much have we loaned out?
We have loaned out, I have it here, $84,950.
So Lynn, can you explain the fund is not to loan out money, it's more of a guarantee?
It's only a guarantee, yes. It's to guarantee the funds. It's to guarantee
Right.
85% of the loan amount, so yes.
What was the,
Thanks,
it's been a while since, of course, first approved this. What was the rationale for the date being set now? Does anybody remember? Instead, why didn't we give it more of a lead time when we first approved it? I just don't remember. Does anybody? Yeah, I know you weren't here, but.
I'm not aware.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, or were you done with the information?
Yes.
Okay, great. Any questions, commissioners? I guess my only question is, I mean, I'm certainly supportive of extending it. 5 years is a long, it's a long time. I hope it's going great for all that time. But it would be great to get some updates, between now and then. So, all right. So we will have a process to do that. All right. Great. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Lynn.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Okay, next up is a budget amendment, consideration of a budget amendment for community linkages to care for overdose prevention and response. And Jennifer Barnett's on this item.
Good evening. I want to start with providing you with just a little background information that connects with this new request. On November 19th, in association with the Safer Together grant through the U.S. Department of Justice's Comprehensive Opioid Abuse Site-Based Program, the board approved a partially covered, grant-funded opioid response coordinator position for Health and Human Services Public Health. It was noted during the presentation that the other portion of the salary and benefits would be covered by Health and Human Services lap salary. So a partially grant-funded, partially county Health and Human Services salary funds would cover that position. The request before you this evening is to approve a budget amendment in the general fund in the amount of $50,000 and to extend from a part-time grant-funded position to a full-time grant-funded position. Again, time-limited as it relates to the available grant funds. The funding to be received is from North Carolina Department of Public Health, passed from the Centers of Disease Control. The program is called Community Linkages to Care for Overdose Prevention and Response. The $50,000 are funds that will cover $19,481 of remaining salary and benefits of the full-time opioid response coordinator, as well as $30,519 to provide contract staffing and training costs for peer support specialists through Sunrise Community for Recovery, and a small amount of post-release funds to aid individuals in obtaining IDs, security deposit, and other costs that prevent an individual from moving forward. This grant specifically provides services to individuals that are not eligible for the medication-assisted treatment pilot program and who are exiting the detention facility. So this is a grant that would augment the existing grant-related services provided for the opioid response.
Thank you so much. Commissioners, any questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Last two items on the agenda. Tim Love is going to help us with, along with, I think Jennifer Barnett's going to assist as well. First is a budget amendment for the Inca Commerce Park Access Road funding. And then there's also, following this, an easement with the Inca Water Corporation for the Inca Heritage Trail. Separate issues, but related.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners.
Good evening.
We've got a presentation we're going to walk through here in a minute, but wanted to introduce you to a host of partners. They've come up and taken some seats behind me. You probably know many of them, but in case you don't, I'll make some introductions. So on the my left, we have Martin Lewis with Fletcher Partners, Tim Anderson with DOT, Steve Cannon, also with DOT, Erica Anderson, Land of Sky Regional Council, Clark Duncan, you know him, and Jennifer Barnett, who keeps us straight on the budget. So with that said, we're going to walk into the presentation. I'll walk us through. If you have any specific questions, I'll probably call on these folks because they know more than me on a lot of this stuff. So history, how do we get here? We've got a picture of a clock tower from the 1900s that represents the old Enca industrial plant. Just a reminder, at the 4,000 people that were employed at that facility in the early 1900s. But more relevant, in 2015, the county funded a bridge over Smoky Park Highway, or from Smoky Park Highway over Hominy Creek. As you know, that bridge has not been connected historically to anything on the other side. The reason it wasn't connected was a lack of funding. But with all that said, let's get to the point. Bullet 3, the county has been working to sort of connect this bridge to the interior access roads within Enca Commerce Park. And we have a proposal today that shows the funding sources that we've been able to pull together based on work with our partners. And those partners are here today. It includes the Appalachian Regional Commission, who's not here, as well as those that are sitting on the front row. In terms of the bridge and the layout, so we've got a map on the right to give you an idea of where Smoky Park Highway is, and then the insert we're drawing out and showing you a picture of the actual bridge, so just to get everyone kind of oriented. Our requests this evening, so to approve the resolution, and in the resolution there's 3 big items that we're asking. So the first is to approve an agreement with Fletcher Partners defining a cost share for the $1 million in additional costs, which I'll describe later in the presentation. Additionally, approve the budget amendment allocating funding for the $1 million additional costs. And finally, authorize the county manager to enter into an agreement with DOT so that any unused funds or cost overruns will be directed back to Buncombe County. And that third bullet, the reason we're asking for that is we're going through the process with DOT and don't have the agreement for you today, but would like to be able to work through that by authorizing the county manager to do so. Project description. So we're talking about the construction of about 0.2 miles of road that connects the existing Smoky Park Highway to the Smoky Park Bridge to the existing walk-off way. This includes the construction of 2 industrial access lanes, so those are 12-foot wide lanes, with quote-unquote complete streets access. For those unfamiliar with complete streets, this is a DOT policy that requires any new streets that are constructed to also have pedestrians in mind. And so on these roads, you will see 5-foot bicycle lanes, as well as curb and gutter, and an adjacent 5-foot sidewalk. Additionally, walk-off way construction, when you approved the Hawk-On incentives, that meant Hawk-On was coming to town, committed to us. At that point, DOT also chipped in and said that they had $1.3 million to support additional access road development. So that's a separate construction project that's going on, but wanted you to be aware of it. This project also includes upgraded signaling at 1923 and Enka Heritage. And finally, but crucially important to this, DOT will be managing the project, so the RFP process as well as the construction. DOT will accept right-of-way for the entire road, and DOT will maintain the road long-term. So that's important for us as a government entity to make sure that we're working with an entity that knows how to build roads, but also will maintain them long-term. In terms of what this project looks like, I know this is kind of a difficult graphic to read, but on the left, I highlight in red the road that we're building. So that's sort of S-shaped figure. And then we zoom out on the right to show you kind of the 2 phases of the project. So phase 1, the walk-off way portion, is the blue section that I've highlighted. And then above that is phase 2, the quote-unquote Enka Heritage section. And the reason I call these out separately is because they're going to proceed on different timelines. The Enka Heritage portion will proceed at a later date because we're waiting on ARC funding, which is Appalachian Regional Commission funding. Walk-off way portion will proceed a little bit quicker because we're just using DOT dollars, which are state dollars. So just wanted to call that out because we'll talk about that more as we go. At any point, if you have questions, please feel free to stop me. In terms of the public benefits, so why are we looking at doing this, or why are you considering this as a board? Bullet 1, we're providing an alternative access from Sand Hill Road, which is a 2-lane road, to the Smoky Park Highway, which is a 5-lane road. As you're aware, the industrial park includes many industrial facilities as well as a school. It also includes a future Enka substation, and Chief Howard Bedingfield is here who can speak to that if necessary. So we're increasing transportation access for both the Enka Intermediate School and the future Enka substation. Additionally, we'll improve pedestrian access throughout the Commerce Park. I mentioned complete streets earlier, so that'll improve access within the park. Can't speak to the roads outside of it. Additionally, we'll improve freight movement. So we already have 10 employers at the Commerce Park, an estimated 1,000 employees, and something like 250 freight loads daily. So the addition of a secondary access point, exit point, will be helpful for this project. And then finally, we'll promote future economic development. For those familiar with the area, there's about 50 acres that will now be accessible by road, and that will be something that we can attract additional companies to. So that's a list of the public benefits. There's definitely a handful, transportation in general, education and fire access, or excuse me, emergency response access, pedestrian accessibility, and economic development. In terms of project budget, this was provided to us by our friends here at DOT who have been studying this for a good bit. This is the project budget, but also the sources of funding. So it's not a line item budget. It just tells you who's paying for what. So the ARC is granting us $2 million. We're waiting on the very final approval for that to come through. It's made it through multiple phases, and we've been given a very strong indication that this will definitely be approved, but we're waiting on that final letter. Additionally, DOT is funding about $1.5 million. There's an asterisk there that indicates that about $1.3 million of that related to the Hawk-On access road, which we mentioned earlier, which leaves about $1 million in local costs. And so that's why we're here tonight. We're asking for your support for that additional $1 million and the cost share that we've broken out for that. So, funding for the local costs. This is documented in the draft agreement that is in your packet, but wanted to just call it out here for those that have not read it, especially those in the public. So the proposed cost share is county is to provide 65% of the remaining local costs, so about $650,000, and Fletcher Partners is to provide 35%. Add those two numbers, you get to $1 million. Additionally, unused funds or overruns will be directed to Buncombe County. So if at the end of this project it's $1 million, no change. If at the end of this project it's $750,000, we'll have an agreement with DOT where that money comes back to Buncombe County, and then we'll distribute that back to Fletcher Partners based on the cost share we've articulated. That does mean that if there is something that happens where the costs exceed the $1 million, we'll get to bullet 3, which means that I'll be coming back to you asking for additional funding, and hopefully not. DOT has reassured me on multiple instances that they feel very good about the cost estimate, the contingencies built in, but I did want to be crystal clear because that is important. So to bring that funding arrangement together, we've got a few agreements for you, or 2 agreements rather. So they're listed here. Agreement 1, which is an agreement with Fletcher Partners, that's in your packet. That defines the cost share, the 65-35% cost share. Agreement 2, the agreement with DOT, not in your packet. We're working on it and are asking for your authorization today to continue that negotiation with DOT. DOT has a pretty standard agreement that they work through. They just have to work it through Raleigh. Once it's ready, we'll pass it along, but just wanted you to be aware of that.
And do you need us to vote on that specifically, or just?
It's included in the resolution.
Okay.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, great.
All right, so then with all that said, so we've got a bunch of agreements, we've got cost sharing, we've got some history. So if you approve this, what happens next? When can we expect a bridge to be connected to a road? And so this is on your agenda today, February 18th. In April, we would expect that the county and Fletcher Partners, if approved, would provide the $1 million to DOT, because DOT wants the money in hand before they proceed with letting a contract. We can understand why. In the summer, we would expect the construction for Phase 1 to begin. So the Phase 1, again, that's the lower portion, that's the Hawk-On portion, and I can show it to you on the map if you'd like. In fall, we'd expect Phase 2 to begin, which is the Enka Heritage portion, which is that upper portion that actually connects to the bridge. And then in spring of 2021, we would anticipate Phase 1 and Phase 2 to be complete. You're remiss if I didn't read the first line to you, and DOT, you should have stopped me before I got this far, but this timeline is subject to change based on procurement, weather, and other delays. We know the construction projects change, and just wanted to give you all a timeline so you know what's coming, but we also recognize that, if it rains every day for the next 3 months, that's going to impact our schedule.
Tim, thanks for walking us through this. Where in the timeline would we project the ARC funding would come in?
That's great. And I would defer, Erica, to you. Do we have a rough idea of when the funding will come in for ARC?
It could be a few weeks, and it could be longer.
Welcome.
Thank you. It could be a few weeks, or it could be a month or so. The last email I had was between DOT and ARC, and I think we've gotten the final paperwork to them.
Okay.
Good deal. So that's our tentative project timeline. Any questions on that? All right, so then bringing it back full circle, so what are we asking of the board today? We're asking for your approval of a resolution that includes 3 big pieces. The resolution includes a request to approve the agreement with Fletcher Partners that defines the cost share. It requests that you approve the budget amendment that allows movement of the money. And Jennifer Barnett can explain the budget amendment to you if you'd like. And then finally, requesting that you authorize the county manager to negotiate an agreement with DOT for the reimbursement of the funds or the cost overruns. So,
All right, but does approving the resolution accomplish everything that we need?
it does.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in there.
All right.
Good.
Great.
Any questions? Comments? Concerns?
Oh, yeah. Sure. There's no item 4 on there I got a problem with, I'll tell you. But, no, seriously, this has been going on for a long time. And, if you didn't know, and I'll just give a shout out to him, somewhere underneath Tim Love's shirt is an S. Because he with a lot of cooperation with a lot of other people, has been able to do some things, and I appreciate this. We've got a road that we were told over and over, it was $4.5 million, over and over, that this is not going to happen, can't be done. But the people in the community, the commissioners, others, did not accept that answer. Because we had built a bridge, that the goal of that bridge was to connect to the back of that school so that people could walk across that bridge, take their kids to school, or drive there and keep the traffic off of Sand Hill Road. And if you could do a drone or get above it and have a view above everything and see how all these pieces are coming together, it's amazing. All the people that are here, I spoke to someone from DOT, this morning, and they got the vision, the work from Land in the Sky, the work from Economic Development, Fletcher Partners, and everybody having a piece in it to be able to have this connect and to have it complete streets and everything for $650,000. This is the way a community gets a project done. From the beginning, it's been going on so long. I want to thank Commissioner Newman, who's on the MPO, been on the MPO for a long time, and his work in being supportive of this and being pragmatic in that support at the same time. I want to thank Commissioner Presley for his support, early and knowing the community over there, and then I know that the rest of I've had numerous conversations with other people on the board and how excited I believe they are about it also. But this is going to be amazing what it's going to do for that community over there. And then we can challenge everybody else to connect those sidewalks. There's some city sidewalks right once we put this in. There's some sidewalks where we can connect, and there's some people that'll be walking their kids to school across that road. And I'm real excited about it. We got our fire department going there. So all these things just happen and come together in a perfect storm or divine intervention, however you want to look at it. But I'm very excited about it, and I'm hopeful that it's going to happen quicker than what everybody's saying. And I know they're all committed to it, and nobody's going to be getting away with anything. They're really going to be pushing it very hard. I challenge the media to change the name of the bridge from the bridge to nowhere to the bridge to about 5 or 6 things if you want to list them. Okay? Because that is done. Huh? No, it's not 4. We're not doing 4 anymore tonight. So, but anyhow, I'm very grateful that y'all have worked so hard on this, and it's just been a vision for a lot of folks, and it took a lot of people to bring it together. And I thank the community for being behind it. And I do want to give it just popped into my mind. There's some people out in I do want to give a shout out to Connect Inca, who was a big proponent of the Inca Heritage Trail over there at Garrett Arts, and this was a dream of his. You know, he's walked his kids to Inca Intermediate over there, and I had an opportunity to do that with my grandson over there, and the Inca Candler Business Association has been behind this and should be excited about it, but I just want to give it a shout out to everybody that could. Thank you for pulling it off, guys. Great work.
All right, well said. Any other comments is there a motion?
I'll move approval.
There's a motion and a second. Are there any members of the public who want to comment? And also, the next item on the agenda is related geographically. So if you have any comments, just go ahead and share those as well while you're up. Mr. Rice, did you want to comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I got a name for the bridge. A cesspool of toxic waste dump. Now, you might look at me and look like a fool, but you environmentalists and you people up on that board don't know one flip about what you're talking about when you talk about this place out here. The people that owns it are millionaires. And it absolutely guts me to think that you're giving them 65% of the money when NEPRO comes in here, and they only get 170,000 of the 18 million. Now, what is the difference here? You going to play politics with it? That's exactly what you're doing. You should be fair to all. But here's the fairness. You should have never put this school there. You should have never put these trails there. You should never agreed to any of this here on this toxic waste dump site. And these millionaires are profiting off of our children. Off of our children. Do you hear that? Public safety. Do you know what public safety is? Built on a dump site? No wonder they can't get the money to build a bridge over there without your help. I'd be ashamed, Joe, to even represent the community in this. And you brag about it. You or Robert either. And I'm a Republican. I'd be ashamed to even represent it. And you Democrats, if you vote for it, you're just as guilty as they are because of the environmental issues that you need to know about. So when it comes to this money, let the millionaires pull it out of their pocket. They're getting all this federal money, all this state money. They're going through all this process. They should be fitting the bill, not us as taxpayers. One of these days, the toxic is going to come out when they're building the bridge. There's an explosion there, right where they're digging the footers. Have you heard that on the news? There's a lot of chemical in that water you don't hear about. The water treatment plant you don't hear about. It's been in the newspaper for years about the water treatment and all the chemical and all the mess that's there. Do you understand what I'm talking about? I don't think you do. I know the history. And these millionaires, they know it. That's the reason they're getting the money that they're getting. They know how to cipher it off of the system. I'd hate to be in their shoes and lay down at night and try to sleep. That's my piece. Do yours.
All right. Anyone else? Clark.
Mr. Chairman, I don't underestimate the great value and necessity of this infrastructure, and I also can't underestimate the challenge it presents to the county in encountering these kind of expenses. So I'd like to just real quickly applaud the partnership that the county, Fletcher Partners, and the DOT have struck to make this happen. The kind of economic development that we aspire to in Buncombe County that will diversify our economy and grow wages and grow tax base requires these investments in infrastructure. And I look at it the same way that I look at the really important investments that this commission has made in education and childcare and affordable housing, and yes, industrial site development, and yes, roads and infrastructure like you're doing today. For many, many years, Joe, we have heard from Bonner and Jacob Home and Southeastern Container, now Wicked Weed and New Belgium, and soon to be joined by 165 employees at Hawk-On, as they've advocated for a safe and efficient way to pull traffic off of Sand Hill Road towards the interstate. So I see return on investment in terms of safety and in terms of efficiency and definitely in long-term economic growth over there in Inca Commerce Park. So thank you for your leadership on this.
Thanks, Clark. All right, anyone else? All right. We have a motion and a second on this. Robert, you?
Yes, I do. Commissioner Belcher, I support you too, because this is a big asset to the Inca Candler area. Me being out there, knowing what it's going to do for, number one, Mr. Bedingfield's new station there to access from Sand Hill Road over to Scratch Ankle or 1923, whatever you call that little thing. The time we know what traffic problems we got there. It's going to be a big asset. The school, as in walking the kids back and forth, we've talked about that for years. And, you know, I just can't believe that we're sitting there and have anyone say that we're putting the kids' safety in there, because we have to trust that we've went through every environmental thing that you could to make it safe. And if we want to sit there and talk about the safety, I mean, just walking outside is not safe sometimes, you know, environmental or whatever you want to do. I'm very disappointed to hear that we have put kids in jeopardy, and that kind of bothers me. So I'm totally supportive of this.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. I just, you guys said it well, but this really has been a heavy lift. You know, it took a lot of things coming together, and that just wasn't by coincidence or luck. It really was a ton of work, and just from land to sky to DOT to county staff and private sector partners. I just really also want to add my thanks to everyone for coming together and getting this done. That's great. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you all. We do have another item in the same part of Buncombe County, and Tim will tell us about that one.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. So our next topic, we have a few slides, relates to a similar part of town and relates to a topic you should be familiar with, but a slightly different topic. So we're going to talk about the Inca Heritage Trail easement. And in terms of background, so not the first time you should have heard about this, because in March 6th of 2019 at your regular meeting, you approved an easement agreement with a host of partners, including Fletcher Partners, EYSO, and others. That agreement granted to the county construction easements and permanent easements to construct the Inca Heritage Trail. While the 2019 agreement was good and got us the majority of the easements needed, it didn't get us everything. So today, we're back before you in Bullet 4 to secure the final easement with the Inca Water Corporation. And so that's the agreement that's going to be before you tonight.
All right.
So our request of the board, this time we're asking for your approval of the Greenway easement agreement with Inca Water Corporation. In terms of getting everyone up to speed on where we're at, so Josh O'Connor's here, so he can walk us through the Inca Heritage Trail if we have any specific questions. But so the Heritage Trail is kind of that green highlighted area with the red line. So that's your trail. The area that you secured the easement on is kind of on the far right, but the proposed easement that we're talking about today is highlighted by yellow and also has the text box that says proposed easement. So that's the easement that we're talking about today. The description of the easement, this is pretty straightforward stuff, but Inca Water agrees to convey the easement to the county for $10. The county agrees to receive the easement. The easement will be granted to the county by December 31st of 2020, and the county reserves the right to do due diligence on the easement as needed. So that's kind of highlights from the agreement, nothing too crazy. If there's no questions, then this brings me back to the wrap, which is I'm requesting board action for you to approve the Greenway easement Greenway easement grant agreement with Inca Water Corporation.
All right, thank you, Tim.
Are there any questions?
Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Okay, we come to our board appointments. And as we promised at the beginning, we'll...
What comment?
We're gonna, let's talk about it for a minute. So
Yeah, we're not gonna go.
we are going to, there's a couple I think we might be able to get done this evening. On the Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee, there's 3 appointments and there's 3 applicants. Would y'all be comfortable moving ahead with those appointments?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
I make a motion to approve those 3.
A second.
All right, motion to approve Jordan Israel, Christopher Fink, and Mary Brenda Tremulay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? On Mountain Area Workforce Development Board, there's 1 vacancy and 1 applicant.
Probably okay.
I move that we approve the one.
Second.
All right, motion to appoint Jessica Rice. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Now, on the others, we do have, multiple applicants.
Many of them, yeah.
And so we're not going to vote on those tonight, but would the commission like to plan on interviewing those applicants? And that would be for the Ag Advisory Board and the Downtown Commission and the Land Conservation Advisory Board. And the African American Commission
Heritage Commission.
as well.
That's fine.
All right, let's plan on inviting those folks to be interviewed. And Lamar, who was the person? What was the board that you brought up at the beginning of?
That was the library board.
The library board. So, and you were saying traditionally they do an interview and make a recommendation. So, Commission, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. We've been taking a more active role in interviewing all these folks.
I'd like to hear from the library board. I'd like to hear what their recommendations are. It might make it a lot easier for us.
But do we also want to interview for it? I guess I have no problem with them making a recommendation, but are
Okay.
we also going to interview as well?
So how many we got? It's going on the next one anyhow, right?
It is, but let me get that information for
Getting
you.
way ahead of this. I'm against number 4, just so you know.
There are 3 vacancies, and the expiration date is in March, but we were trying to get ahead of the situation and let you guys know if you wanted to interview or not.
How many we got applied?
I don't have that information.
I don't think we'll make a decision.
Right.
We need to know
Any
how
comments?
many's applied before we can decide if we want to interview.
Okay. I will just, we've been spending a lot of time on this. I think it's been good. We've gotten good people appointed. I continue to believe we should create a subcommittee of the county commission to work on boards and commissions appointments.
You're not going to talk about that at 8 o'clock
that
tonight,
is, well, I'm just saying that's my encouraged consideration of that in the future. But if we're not going to do that, then I think it's our job to interview all these people. It's my take on it. So I mean, for some of these boards where we only have the number of applicants for the position, I think that's different. But if we have a lot of applicants for something, then I think to me that's kind of the default.
I mean, we can
process.
do it we've been doing. If we get 25, we can pick the top ones to interview. We've been doing that, so I don't have a problem interviewing.
Okay, so we'll add the library board applicants as well, once those come in. I'm sorry, what was the deadline for that?
Expiration is in March. We have advertised for those positions.
Okay.
So I don't think the advertisement has expired yet.
Well, okay, well, why don't we make a final decision once we know how many come in, because if there's 50, maybe we'll narrow it down. But I guess, do we want to tell the library board, look, our plan is to interview the applicants for this. It doesn't mean you can't make a recommendation, but, do you need to, I'm sorry, what?
Would you want them to do a screening and send you ours, or you want to do all 50 if you get 50, let's say?
I don't think we're gonna get that many,
I don't
but
either, but.
why don't we, that's a good idea, though. Why don't we hold off making a final decision on how we'll handle that once we know how many people are applied?
We haven't contacted the library about it, but we wanted to get information from the board so we could let the library know what kind of decisions would be made. But we can definitely contact the library and kind of fill them out and let them know how the board feels as far as if they will do interviews or not.
Sounds good. All right. We now come to public comment.
I would also like to
Yes, sir.
say, when we adopted the new policy for the boards and commission, one of the requests was to have the vacant positions for a year ahead, or it wasn't a year ahead, but it was to have those advertised early. So we have put that on our website for the whole year. And I also gave you a handout, Chairman Newman, with those if you want to announce those. I think you had stated at one point in time you wanted to announce upcoming vacancies.
Yes.
So it's up to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for doing that. And we will encourage people to go to our website to check all this out. So let me just mention a couple of these, not for the whole year, but just that are coming up in the near future. In March, we are going to have vacancies on the Historic Resources Commission, the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council, the Library Board. In April, there's going to be openings on the Buncombe County Board of Adjustments, the Planning Board, Mountain Area Workforce Development Board, and AB Tech Community College Board of Trustees. So if you're interested in any of those community boards, then please learn more about them on the county's website and consider applying. Thank you for doing that. All right. Now we come to public comment. Mr. Yelton, you can get us started. Let us know your name, and you have 3 minutes, and you get an orange light at 30 seconds and a red light when your time's up.
Don Yelton. And I was holding my hand up. Of course, you decided not to take any more comments when you all were discussing this vaping thing. And you all spent a large amount of time discussing health benefits tonight, didn't you? And if you remember my comment, I told you as self-funded, you could do a lot of things nobody else could do. Wouldn't it have been better to have a penalty in terms of rating someone for their health, for vaping and smoking in a county car? Because that way you could have gotten that money throughout the year for doing something that does impact their health. And I'll say that to you as a smoker. I wished I never had. But being a biologist, you know, you didn't worry about what it did to an animal. You studied the plants. So in reality, we talked about the theater of the absurd tonight. You spent all that time trying to figure out how to get people to be healthy. Then you spent all that time about what you're going to do to penalize them. And you had it right in front of you. If you vape, or if you're caught vaping in a county car, you are vaping. So this is going to impact your health insurance. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Mary Standard, Montreat, District 2. Just a matter of personal reflection, if I may. Government's hard work. Democracy's hard work. Saying to you, thank you for your service just sounds like empty words of gratitude. But I do thank you for your service, and I also thank all the members of the community who work together to make government work. I wish for every person in this room and those hearing me on streaming that at some point in your life that you accept a position within government, on a committee, on an organization, or serving in an elected office where you are subject to public records request. It's an experience like no other, and you can't appreciate it from a community standpoint until you've been there. And also the fact that you are presented with an immense amount of information on the fly, far more than you can reasonably comprehend. You have to have good staff to make decisions. I respect your comments. And now for my final personal reflection. The first time I attended this board was in 2013. That was a particularly interesting time in Buncombe County politics. In 2012 is when you were divided into districts. District 1 and District 3 elections were settled pretty quickly. Not so for District 2. It was well into the early part of 2013, if I remember correctly, before we had a commissioner. And I want to recognize Mike Fryer. I have never been to a commission meeting in which Mike Fryer was not present until tonight. And I thank him for his service. He said what he meant, and he meant what he said. What else can we ask of Commissioner? Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. All right. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Vaping stuff isn't my whole big thing, but just how can we teach our kids responsibility if we don't give them a chance to be responsible? You know, as far as the stuff that's vaping out there, it's not just tobacco. There's a whole slew of stuff out there. Some of it's just pure air and flavored air, you know. I mean, how can you tell what they got in it? There's a whole can of worms. But the whole reason I'm really here is when I was a child, I thought like a child, I spoke like a child, and acted as a child. When I became an adult, I put childish things away. That was one of my favorite lines from a Forrest Whitaker movie, and when I found out where it really came from, the meaning took on a whole lot more, you know. Buncombe County has grown a lot, and I appreciate you keeping our county in mind. And remember, our neighbors prospering helps us as WNC grows. After all, when you talk about the tourism and thing in the earlier meeting, the people who tourist here, some may be here just once in their life or once a year, when, you know, Haywood, Madison, Marion, where there's a lot more room for growth and stuff like that, then they come here a lot more, you know. So I ask when y'all are doing the budgeting and stuff like that, you consider the neighbor approach, or the neighborhood approach bigger than just us. I'll also tell you, and this is just a personal thing to all y'all, if you get a chance to get on Netflix and see the movie Black Bear, you know, like Gar, Black Bear, there is, it's a whole lot more than what you think you're going to get out of it. I was honored to be a part of it. And so, speaking of bears, a buddy of mine turned around, was pushing the bear poaching thing. He also got like 77,000 hits in like a blink of an eye. But also what we had was where they just locked down on the pets getting harmed and stuff like that. And then we seen directly afterwards that the horses, the animals, the farm animals getting hurt. I think it'd be cool if we could actually turn around and put something towards the law to turn around to where it actually includes those animals. And the main reason I'm here is actually because of Mike Fryer. Up there going to church, and I am going to run over probably. They have politician signs up on the wall. And some names I didn't even recognize. But you know what? That's one of ours. You know, y'all honored us earlier. I think it'd be pretty cool to turn around and I've talked to his daughter. They do have the signs, and she even said I could have them. But one thing I think would be cool for our kids to see, what if the red and blue could come together and make a little purple maybe, and if y'all would actually buy from you know what, $5 a sign, set what, 8 schools, 20 from the Dems, 20 from Republicans, just to show that it ain't about the politics and that we're a lot more. And so in their civics class, when they actually have the signs up there, they could actually say, hey, that man was right there till his dying day with us. You know what I mean? And for my last, well, maybe I did make my last time, so.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. They will take them, and they are there if y'all do it. So.
Okay. Mr. Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. You know, I've heard of the civic duties of people. They ain't nobody put their time in like I have on civic duty. I've served on boards, but I never asked them to put my name on that board. But I served in what, Joe, you might call ex officio. And, you know, I learned a lot. I've learned a lot about government. And I've learned about how boards work and policies being made. I do respect yous as a person. I respect yous a lot. But politics, I don't have any respect for. Politics is no place for a place of making good decisions. Good decisions come from the heart that's clean and pure and ready to do the job, where you have to stand alone or not. Mr. Fryer showed that from what he did. He didn't have the big education that most of you got, but one thing he had integrity about what he did. And that's what I loved about him. I give him his flowers while he lived. I don't have to talk to him after he's gone. The only thing I can say, he stood by what he said he'd do, he did it. So I like that part. The other thing is that in the near future, I think there's going to be a big decision for y'all to make. The county manager, and I say it that way respectfully, is spending money at your discretion as fast as it can come in and already designated for the money that's going to be coming on the next round when we do the reevaluation. We are looking at a lot of money. Don't tell me it ain't, because I know how to figure too. So I'd like to see how many of you up there that's got the gronads or whatever you call it to stand up and give the taxpayers some relief. How long has it been? Thomas Oble give a 10-cent tax reduction. Good Lord, what was that? That was big back then. What could you do today? You Democrats are in control now of this. You Republicans are just idling along. But you Democrats are the ones that we need to be talking to, because you've got the 4 votes right now. So when it comes tax time, I'd like to see a 5-cent reduction. 5 cents. Okay, Joe, you can swallow hard. That's a good one, ain't it? 5 cents. You might think I'm a fool, but don't tell me that the pockets of this county ain't lined and they've got it packed back in every budget around here. It's packed back. I did this one time and showed how many millions of dollars is back there, and it come to fruition. And I knew what I was talking about. The audit report is very clear.
All right.
Read
Thanks,
it.
Jerry. Or anyone else? All right. We have a closed session to talk about an economic development project. No problem.
So Mr. Rice can hear me. We need a motion to enter into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A4 to discuss matters relating to economic development issues in the area served by the public body.
Is there a motion to go into closed session for that purpose?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We will not take up any other public business when we come out of closed session. We will simply adjourn.